Chapter 863. The walls have ears, why don't we go somewhere else? Brother Yu suggested, seeing that the candidates were getting more and more obvious. These people were lacking in everything but a place. They went to a nearby building and closed the door. No one would be able to hear anything they said. Speaking of strange pupil, isn't strange pupil a little too famous? How do we know if the people from Eagle Party know her? Also, is strange pupil reliable? She doesn't seem to be that close to her, Brother Yu suggested. Brother Yu continued the conversation as soon as they returned to the stronghold. Are you familiar? The Han clan's young master asked Gu Fei. Why are you asking me? Gu Fei was surprised. You're wearing her ring, Han family young master said. The first thing Gu Fei did in the previous battle was to borrow strange pupil's mana ring. He still wore it on his finger. Everyone looked at Gu Fei's finger and nodded. Being able to borrow equipment in the game was proof that they were very familiar with each other. We don't need connections to borrow things, we need trust, understand? Gu Fei patted his chest. Just tell me if strange pupil will work or not. Han family young master was too lazy to waste time with him. Can't we just ask her? Gu Fei was about to send the message when young master Han said coldly, you better be able to confirm it yourself. Stop asking so many questions. Are you afraid that the news won't reach Qingqi Studio? What do you mean? Gu Fei was confused. If you really don't know strange pupil's background and interpersonal relationships, then forget it. What if she's friends with Eagle Party? Han family young master said. Gu Fei was stunned again. Strange pupil knew Eagle Party. He suddenly felt that he could not ignore this possibility. This was because he remembered strange pupil's past. This woman had hired Jian Nanyu and the others to steal his Night Stream light sword. Perhaps her behavior had something to do with the Eagle Group, which was also selling her body. Isn't the Eagle Regiment mainly active in the southeast? How could it be related to our people? Yutian Shenming said. Be careful. The person must be absolutely reliable. You can't be careless about this. Han family young master said. Gu Fei could only shake his head. Other than this pair of magical power rings, I don't know anything else about her. Excluded. Han family young master decisively removed this candidate. Who else could it be? Everyone knocked their heads in thought. Old Yun, you don't have any female mage players? The Han family young master asked Yun Zhongmu. They were very overpowered, but there was no need to think about it. There were no women at all. Yun Zhongmu and his group had more than 100 people, and there were some female players among them. Yun Zhongmu had a troubled expression on his face. We have some sisters with us. They won't drag us down if we drag them to kill people, but we have to be educated to be reporters. It's not suitable, right? When the others heard this, they all sighed. Every place had its own people. The female players of Moonlit Night City had all been raised to be fierce bandits. No one has a candidate? Han family young master swept his gaze around. The conditions are a bit harsh. Everyone was in pain. There were very few female players in the game. Now that they had to be absolutely reliable and restricted to mages, they had to be good at acting. The difficulty was like finding a needle in a haystack without a needle. Why don't we just ask Duo Mumu for help? Just act as you are. Do we even need to trick them? Yutian Shenming suddenly had an idea and said excitedly. He felt that his idea was too brilliant. Are you out of your mind? Would Duo Mumu be stupid enough to ruin his own reputation? Han family young master scolded. Wait a minute, wait a minute. Gu Fei suddenly had an idea. Everyone looked over. Gu Fei looked around. In the online gaming circle, don't tell me there are only these two reporters? Everyone was startled and instantly understood Gu Fei's idea. Brother Yu slapped his thigh. That's right. Why do we have to hang on to one tree? They aren't the only online reporters. As he said this, Brother Yu started flipping through his information book. Everyone expressed their respect. Brother Yu, you even recorded this in the game? It's nothing, Brother Yu replied casually and immersed himself in the joy of searching. His face was full of happiness. Drifting watched from the side and felt a myriad of emotions. If he knew how to enjoy this kind of joy, he wouldn't have thought of dying in the information room. Duo Mumu Duo is a professional reporter for fun gaming website. Most professional gaming websites have professional reporters. For example, 52 gaming website, Good Mood, the more you play, the happier you get. These websites definitely have them, Brother Yu said as he searched. No one dared to disturb him. They looked at Brother Yu with sincerity. Brother Yu flipped to the relevant page and immediately found it. 52 gaming websites watching the paddy fields. This is also a famous reporter. Everyone should know about it, right? Of course, it's not as famous as Duo Mumu Duo. Everyone nodded except for Gu Fei. There's also Good Mood, the more you play, the happier you get. These are the representatives of various websites. There are also people from other websites like Kung Pao Chicken, Uncle Mu Tong, same yesterday. What do you think? Brother Yu looked at everyone. Tell me about everyone. Are they all in a group like Mudo, and Mudo? Asked the young master of the Han family. That's not it. These are all from the same person. Gender, profession, and even the best level, Han family young master said. Watching the paddy fields, male, archer, Good Mood, female, archer, here's you get. Male, bandit, Kung Pao Chicken, female bandit, Uncle Mu Tong, male, archer, same yesterday, female bandit. Brother Yu said a bunch of things in one breath. At the end, he explained, these people's information is a bit older. Their levels are all old. Why are their professions either archer or bandit? Yutian Shenming noticed this pattern. Probably because it's convenient to travel? Brother Yu guessed. Bandits can also sneak around. Unscathed in battle said. Everyone nodded their heads. Paparazzi. Then why isn't Mudwo one? Before Yutian Shenming could ask, he was pushed to the side by Han family young master. Then he looked at Gu Fei and asked, can she Xiaonan come? Do you think she's absolutely reliable? Gu Fei said. Do you have prejudice against her? Han family young master asked. Nonsense. She's a liar, Gu Fei said. What I want is a liar, Han family young master nodded his head. I can't guarantee who I'm tricking. Gu Fei said. If it's someone else, it's hard to say whether or not they'll be tricked. At least there's a technical guarantee, Han family young master said. If she's online, should I call her? Gu Fei asked. I've already called her. Yutian Shenming was quite proactive. Gu Fei couldn't do anything but sigh. If she's a female archer, then she'll be able to eat and drink well. Then I'll go get more information on her. Brother Yu said. Go. Han family young master nodded his head. He was contacting Cloud Ting Studio. He hoped to get some information on the studio circle. For example, did their circle have any contact with online game journalists? Did they have any regular customers? If delicious drinks had something to do with Ying Qi's studio, then it would be exposed. This kind of thing was not a secret. Yun Teng had more than 10 directors who used to work for Ying Qi, and Wu Yi was one of the 3 bosses of Yun Teng. It was easy for the young master of the Han family to understand the situation. Ying Qi's people would definitely not know this rich and powerful person. At this point, young Master Han seemed to have thought of something and quickly sent a message to Brother Yu, who was still on his way to the offline zone. If possible, confirm if delicious drink and spicy drinks knows someone from Eagle Group. I'll try. Brother Yu wasn't good at PK, but he had his own abilities in this area. However, Brother Yu still needed some time to do this. At this moment, there was a knock on the door. Yutian Shenming happily ran to open the door. Accompanied by a goosebumps-raising Sister Tian, Shi Shaoan was led in. It's quite lively here. Everyone in the room had more or less interacted with each other. Shi Shaotian casually greeted them and walked towards Gu Fei, Sword Demon, and Han family young master. She clearly knew where the center of power was. What's the matter? Say it. This was not a tavern, so there were a limited number of stools. There were only 3 in the room. Those who fought for a seat first would get it, and those who didn't had to stand. Most of them were reserved, unlike Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle, who shamelessly fought for a seat. The 2 of them took a seat each, and the rest were polite to each other. In the end, Han family young master sat down without any hesitation. Yutian Shenming went to open the door, and the bench was empty. The others continued to be reserved and didn't sit down. Shi Xiaotian came over, and Yu Tian Shunming politely invited her to his empty seat. Unscathed in battle followed and fought for his seat. Shi Xiaotian asked, "What's the matter?" The two of them started arguing for a long time. The scene lasted until Gu Fei pulled out his sword, and the two of them instantly quieted down. They stood there obediently and didn't move. One old and one young, one old and one young, made people not know whether to laugh or to be angry. The young master of the Han family was the only one sitting there, but he did not feel uncomfortable at all. Without waiting for Shi Xiaotian to ask, he told him their plan. "Oh, that's a good plan. Did you think of it?" Shi Xiaotian asked. "Drifting's idea." Han family young master didn't want to take credit. "Where is the scroll?" "Let me see," said Shi Xiaotian. Drifting handed it to Shi Xiaotian. Shi Xiaotian opened it and read the instructions. Then he asked, "Are you sure it can be used in your personal space?" "I only have this one, so I haven't tested it." Drifting smiled bitterly. "But I think the principle of this thing is the same as the teleportation scroll. As long as you have the authority to the house, you can use the teleportation scroll. There's no doubt about that." Shi Xiaotian nodded, and then asked, "Who is the person I'm going to pretend to be?" "Games are good for your mood. Do you know that?" said Han family young master. "Yes, a reporter." "Are you sure you don't know him?" asked Shi Xiaotian. "Half of it. I'm working on the other half," said Han family young master. "How do I get in touch with him?" "Through a person in charge of Ing Chi's studio in the main city," said Han family young master. "One of our own?" "Through him, you can get in touch with Ing Chi's boss. As for how to act as a reporter, you have to rely on yourself," said Han family young master. "Oh," Shi Xiaotian answered and then said, "Then I need to do some homework." "Study the cases of the studio being interviewed and reported," said Shi Xiaotian. "Professional. I'll keep in touch." Shi Xiaotian left. Chapter 864. There were a bunch of experts left in the room. They looked at each other and finally looked at young Master Han. "We're done here, right?" Getting Ing Chi's trust and sneaking into their warehouse is only the first step. The second step is equally important, Han family young master said. "What's the second step?" everyone asked. "How to move the goods out of Ing Chi's warehouse in the shortest time possible," Han family young master said. "That's easy. Go in and put them in our pockets." Unscathed in battle said. "It's not that simple," Drifting shook his head. "We don't have much time to do this. If they find something strange, they'll immediately remove the access. How many of us can get in such a short time? How much time do we have to store things? What kind of obstacles will we face? We need to think about all of these." Wait. Sword Demon, who hadn't spoken a word, suddenly stopped everyone. Everyone's hearts skipped a beat. Could it be that the Sword Ghost was going to call a halt to the plan again? Sword Demon said, "Did you guys forget about a problem? When we open the warehouse to the players, we'll see the players' names. How can Shi Xiaotian pretend to be eating hot drinks?" Everyone was startled when they heard that. Even young Master Han furrowed his brows. This was such an obvious loophole, but they had really overlooked it just now. Or maybe eating hot drinks is just a pseudonym for the article. "He doesn't use this ID in the game?" Drifting said. "If that's the case, brother, you wouldn't have kept it a secret." Han family young master shook his head. He looked at his friend's list. "Brother, you had already gone offline. I hope Ing Chi and Eagle Group don't know about this?" Unscathed in battle said. "That's hard to guarantee." Han family young master sighed. From Yun Teng, he had confirmed that Ing Chi and eating hot drinks had nothing to do with each other. But whether or not they knew about eating hot drinks in the game was another matter. "What should we do?" everyone asked each other. "Call that woman back first," Han family young master said. Yu Tian Shinming eagerly sent another message. After a while, he said in a daze, "Sister Xiaotian said that she has already considered this problem. She doesn't intend to pretend to be rich and powerful. She said that she has her own ways. If we don't understand, we shouldn't get involved." A room full of experts was despised. Gu Fei was very angry. "You're just a liar, Yet you're still so arrogant. Don't talk about being arrogant, the Han family young master said calmly. Everyone in this house is arrogant. The people in the room looked at each other and nodded. Indeed, this room was full of arrogant bulls. Since she said that we don't need to worry about it, let's ignore it. Let's continue to study the second stage. I mean, we can do a drill in the second stage, said the Han family young master. A drill? Everyone's eyes widened. Yes, it's a drill. The Han family young master nodded solemnly. Just tell us what to do. Yun Zhongmu liked to be direct. Let's go buy some stuff first and make this place look like a warehouse. The Han family young master said as he stood up. In the end, the plan was very heaven-defying. It was divided into 3 groups. Brother Yu went to collect more information, Shi Xiaotian went to prepare for her deception, and the rest of them practiced how to be efficient movers. The group of experts first went to the trading street and bought a lot of cheap trash. This kind of trash was hard to get when it was really needed. There were a lot of it in the system store, but the price was very shameless. The rich players didn't pick up this kind of stuff. Those who did would sell it to the system store to earn some pocket money. If they put it up in the auction house, it would be like giving the system a free service fee. Only true noobs would set up stalls on the business street. Only noobs would think that these things could be sold for money. But today, these garbage stalls, which had always been despised by people, were swept clean by a group of well-equipped fellows. The trading street immediately boiled over. Many unscrupulous peddlers thought that some rich fools had come, so they took out their treasures and prepared to make a killing. A group of people fought to be the first to find out where these idiots went and chased after them like a swarm of bees. The ones in the lead were obviously the agility professions. At this moment, the players who became warriors, mages, and priests were filled with regret. But they didn't give up and continued to chase until they saw the agility players who were one step ahead. They all looked as if they had been hit by frost, standing listlessly on the side of the road. What's going on? The trading street was also considered a circle. Those who mingled here often knew each other and were also familiar with each other. Seeing these guys' strange expressions, the players who arrived later couldn't help but go up and ask, "Damn, the guy who cleans the trash is a very heaven-defying person?" One person said, "Very heaven-defying?" Another person was surprised. Right now in Cloud City, there wasn't a guild with a name more resounding than Very Heaven-Defying. Although these players didn't know any Very Heaven-Defying people, one thing was for sure, Very Heaven-Defying people weren't idiots with a lot of money. "I saw Qianli drunk, so scary." One person tightly gripped a staff in his hand and said with lingering fear. This staff was the treasure that he was going to use to sell. When he saw the mage in the other party's group, he went up to stop them. When he got close, he discovered that the other party was wearing a black robe and had a purple sword. He didn't dare say a word and just turned around and left. Recommend a weapon to Qianli drunk? That would be a foolish act. The night streamer's stats had already been exposed. Currently in the game, there wasn't a magic weapon with higher damage than this sword. And it was said that the only weapon with higher damage than this sword was the thin-waist dance dagger wind dance. These experts, why did they come here to pick up trash? The group of players was very confused, but in the end, they didn't chase after them. The small interlude created by this group of reckless players didn't affect the mood of the experts. Everyone took a bag of trash back to the stronghold and dumped it on the ground. But this still seemed to be a small amount. If Inga Workshop only had this much trash, then they wouldn't be able to call themselves the industry leader. Isn't it a bit hard to fill up this room? Yutian Shenming saw that everyone's bags were empty. Unexpectedly, they only had this much trash. He couldn't help but say this. The street has already been swept clean. What do we do? My bag isn't even full yet. Unscathed in Battle said. In this parallel world, everyone's bag capacity wasn't fixed. It depended on the character's weight. Just make do and put on a show, right? Yutian Shenming said, but when he saw everyone coldly staring at him, he immediately lowered his head and pretended not to say anything. If we don't take it seriously, then what's the point of practicing? Han family young master said, let's mobilize the crowd. Have everyone go to the low-level leveling area and get some trash. Cloud Twilight said. Let's do it ourselves. The more people there are, the easier it will be for information to leak. Han Family Young Master said. My brother is definitely reliable. Cloud Twilight said without hesitation. If there are too many people moving, then it'll attract attention. Han Family Young Master said. If that's the case, then we need to be more vigilant. Since Inga Workshop isn't willing to give up, he might have already sent people over to observe our movements. Cloud Twilight said. That's true. Everyone nodded. Han Family Young Master pulled out a scroll and marked the coordinates as he said, then let's use the scroll to go back and forth. It'll save us some time. The group of people immediately went to the low-level leveling area. Parallel world players couldn't open a SMUF account, so as the game continued, the low-level leveling areas became fewer and fewer. With such a group of experts appearing here, it was quite domineering. In just a short moment, everyone's bags were full. Then, they would throw the scrolls back into the room and come back to farm again. After going back and forth a few times, the items in the room were finally stacked up high, and it looked like a warehouse. The equipment that couldn't be stacked were the main ones. The miscellaneous materials that could be stacked were also arranged neatly. Alright, we just need to fill up one room. We'll probably gather the materials as soon as we come out of the teleportation door. We won't have time to move to another room. Han Family Young Master said. What's the drill? Yutian Shinming asked. Sword Demon, remove everyone's permissions first. Han Family Young Master said. Sword Demon was a very OP guild leader, so he had the highest permissions for property. It was just like how he had the highest permissions in the guild chat. The guild's property was initially open to all guild members, but the guild leader had the right to change it. At this moment, after Sword Demon removed all permissions, everyone was automatically teleported out of the room. Sword Demon also walked out. These are the scrolls I made for the room. Han Family Young Master took out 2 scrolls. There were a total of 7 people here. 1 scroll wouldn't be enough to fly out. Sword Demon, pretend to be one of In Chi's people. We'll form a team and you give us team permissions. You wait in the room, we'll fly directly into the room. Once you notice something, immediately remove the permissions. We'll observe the situation first. Han Family Young Master arranged everyone's scenes. Even a drill would waste 2 scrolls. Unscathed in battle shook his head and sighed. Sword Demon had already set up the permissions and entered the room. The 6 people outside held 2 scrolls and waited for Han Family Young Master to speak. Wait a moment, let's catch them off guard. Han Family Young Master said. After standing there stupidly for about 5 minutes, Han Family Young Master nodded. The person holding the scroll immediately used the scroll and the teleportation circle opened. However, the white light faded and the teleportation failed. The system indicated that the teleportation coordinates were invalid. Everyone was startled. Sword Demon had already pushed open the door and walked out, looking at them helplessly. You removed the permissions? Everyone asked. Sword Demon nodded. You didn't just open the interface and wait for it, right? Of course not. You're too fast. Of course I did it as fast as possible. Sword Demon said. Everyone looked towards Han Family Young Master. In theory, In Chi's people wouldn't have the mental preparation like Sword Demon, so they would be a bit slower in their reactions. How far did the teleportation go? Han Family Young Master asked Sword Demon, who was teleporting to the destination. I didn't pay much attention. Sword Demon was focused on removing the permissions and didn't have time to observe the changes in the teleportation circle. There's no point in calculating the time. We won't be using the teleportation circle. Han Family Young Master shook his head. Have you used this teleportation circle before? Sword Demon asked Drifting. Drifting shook his head. I don't know if there's one on the market. It would be best if we could get one and see the effect. Han Family Young Master said. I haven't seen it before. Drifting said. Let me see if Cloud Soaring has any ideas. Han Family Young Master said. The studio was much more resourceful than the players. Nitrite understood that Han Family Young Master must be thinking of ways to trick In Chi. Although he was busy with the leveling process, Han family young master didn't hesitate to ask for help. When he heard that they needed a scroll, he didn't ask much and immediately sent someone to inquire. How is it? Everyone was waiting for the news from Han family young master. I don't know yet. He went to inquire. Han family young master said, it's necessary to use the teleportation scroll to test it out. The teleportation scroll can teleport 4 people at once. Who knows what the effect of this teleportation circle is? If we have to queue up and enter one by one, I think we should cancel this plan. It was rare for Zhang Wushang to be serious, and what he said made a lot of sense. Even young Master Han couldn't find any reason to despise him. According to the effect of the teleportation circle, we can determine how many people will be sent out. Sword Demon nodded and said, but don't just sit around. If you have nothing to do, practice loading things. Load as much as you can. Practice. Han family young master shouted. Time ticked by, and a bunch of famous experts stayed in their rooms, practicing this thing. There was no news from Brother Yu, Shi Xiaotian, and Nitrite Radical. Brother Yu and Shi Xiaotian weren't online at all. Han family young master asked about Nitrite Radical. Nitrite Radical said that he was already doing his best. He confirmed that his studio didn't have it and was currently asking around in the circle. Be careful. This was Han family young master's warning. I understand. This was Nitrite Radical's reply. The two of them continued to communicate tacitly. It was impossible to tell what they were talking about. No one would have thought that the day would pass just like that. For the entire night, even Gu Fei didn't have the nerve to go offline. He shared the joys and sorrows with everyone else in the room, training hard and snatching equipment. It wasn't just the original 7 people who were training together. Because the effect of the teleportation circle was unknown, what if 10 or 20 people could enter at once? With this assumption as the premise, Yun Zhongmu called a few of his brothers over to carry out simulation training together. As for Brother Yu, Shi Xiaotian, and Nitrite Radical, they didn't move even when the sky turned bright. Let's rest first. There might be news when we wake up. Everyone went to the resurrection point, said goodbye to each other, and went offline. That night, they simulated several possible scenarios that could happen after the teleportation was successful and conducted targeted training. The results were quite satisfactory. Many people felt that it was a pity to only do this once after training so hard. It would be best if they could do it 8 or 10 times to make up for their hard work. In the afternoon, the first person to come online was Sword Demon. When it came to something that he had decided to do, Sword Demon would immediately become the most serious and attentive one. As soon as he came online, Brother Yu immediately sent a message. Where are you? Why isn't anyone here at this time? It was already 3:30 in the afternoon. For these people who ate, drank, and slept all day in the game, it was unusual for them not to come out at this time. Everyone's normal routine was to wake up at noon, eat lunch as breakfast, and then start the day's game. Sometimes they slept late in the morning and went online late. But at this time, everyone was still not here at 3 o'clock. This was very unusual. Last night we played quite late. Maybe they're still resting. Sword Demon replied to Brother Yu. How are things on your side? I've looked through many channels, and I'm 100% sure that eating hot drinks and Eagle Group have nothing to do with each other. They definitely don't know each other. Those who have dealt with eating hot drinks face to face all say that she's a pretty woman. That Shi Xiaotian is also a good match. However, eating hot drinks level isn't high. She's only level 39 and hasn't changed classes yet. Brother Yu said, the situation has changed. Shi Xiaotian's side said that they won't pretend to be eating hot drinks. Sword Demons suddenly realized that they should have informed Brother Yu about this change. Brother Yu was still preparing for eating hot drinks. Wasn't this a wasted night? But this news really surprised Brother Yu. Sword Demon explained the reason. Brother Yu focused on the big picture and didn't lose his temper over his wasted effort. Instead, he asked with concern, what does she plan to do? We're not sure. Yesterday, she didn't see anyone for the whole night, just like you. Sword Demon and Brother Yu first chatted and then met up at the guild stronghold. It wasn't until 5:30 that the group gathered again, but Shi Xiaotian was still not online. But there was also good news. When the Han family young master came, he swung his hand on the table. Everyone looked at it. Portal scroll. The power of the studio was indeed extraordinary. They weren't afraid that he couldn't get it. They were afraid that it didn't exist in the game. This portal scroll confirmed that it existed. After a lot of hard work, Nitrite really found it. After all, the game was so big. There were tens of millions of players in 100 main cities. A mere portal scroll didn't need to be hidden so mysteriously like top-grade equipment. Even so, everyone still carefully confirmed that this scroll was the same version as the one Drifting had. Then it was time to put it into practice. Since the person who would use the scroll would be Shi Xiaotian, they finally decided that this exercise should help Shi Xiaotian familiarize himself with it. After dinner, Shi Xiaotian finally appeared. Everyone let out a sigh of relief. Waiting for someone was also quite a torturous thing. How's the preparation? Everyone didn't have the energy to talk nonsense. When they saw Shi Xiaotian, they directly asked, "Brother Yu, what did you find on your side?" Shi Xiaotian first asked Brother Yu. "Me? I have information about eating and drinking, but I can't pretend to be her anymore, right?" Brother Yu said, "I can't directly pretend to be any reporter. I can only be myself, but my identity will also be a reporter for a game website." Shi Xiaotian said, "That makes it even more difficult." Han family young master said, "So I still need one more night to prepare." Shi Xiaotian said, "What exactly are you planning? Can you let us know?" Gu Fei was always wary of Shi Xiaotian. "You can come with me," Shi Xiaotian said. Chapter 865. Gu Fei hesitated for a moment, but Yutian Shenming and Enscathed in Battle had already stood up. They enjoyed doing things with beautiful women, no matter what they did. The two of them stopped Gu Fei. Qianli, there's no need to trouble you with this kind of small matter. Killing and robbing are your arts. You can stay and practice. You two go to the side. Gu Fei was infuriated. If Shi Xiaotian was here to deceive everyone in the room, these two fellows would undoubtedly be the easiest to fall for. If he were to smile at them, they would probably lose their consciousness. If he asked them to follow Shi Xiaotian, it would be the same as not following him at all. "I'll go take a look." Gu Fei turned around and told everyone before following Shi Xiaotian. Yutian Shenming and Enscathed in Battle tried to follow them, but with Gu Fei between them, the two felt that it would be pointless. Thus, they tactfully stayed behind. "Where are we going?" Gu Fei asked Shi Xiaotian. "To pick up some custom-made items," Shi Xiaotian said. "What items?" "Scamming equipment." Shi Xiaotian smiled. "Did I disgust you again?" Gu Fei was speechless. How should he put it? This was a skill that he looked down on, but at this time, they needed to use this skill. He couldn't help but think of that unbearably vulgar saying. Whether a gun was good or bad depended on who held it in their hands. But this time, was it good or bad? Gu Fei couldn't say for sure. He only understood one thing. It was Ying Qi who caused trouble for everyone. There was no place for reasoning in the game. This kind of thing could only be solved by themselves. Honestly speaking, Gu Fei liked this method. If it was just a simple PK, then it would be perfect. But this time, it was an opponent that couldn't be of much use in PK. This made Gu Fei feel helpless. On the other hand, Shi Xiaotian was like a fish in water in such a situation. Gu Fei's displeasure rose by several levels. "Let's go." Gu Fei ignored Shi Xiaotian and urged her to hurry up. "Aren't we walking?" Shi Xiaotian muttered as she led Gu Fei through the streets of Cloud City. Soon, they arrived at the old district of Cloud City. As its name suggested, the old city district was dilapidated and old. The NPCs who moved about here were all scantily clad, looking like refugees who had been stranded in this place. The scenery here was ugly, and the people here were ugly. It was the most desolate and lifeless area in Cloud City. Unless they were forced by a quest, no one would come here. Gu Fei, who had gone through all the streets of Cloud City, had never been here before. He looked at the scene in surprise. It was completely different from his impression of Cloud City. He almost suspected that he and Shi Xiaotian used a teleportation scroll to change places. Where is this? Gu Fei couldn't help but ask. Broken District. You've never been here before? The old district was called the Broken District by Cloud City players. No. Gu Fei looked around. Then it can only mean that you've never done quests in the game. Shi Xiaotian said. Although no one liked to come to the old district, there were still a few quests with generous rewards that would send players to this place. Unexpectedly, he hadn't done any of these quests. There were only two possibilities for a player over level 40. First, he wasn't a player from Cloud City. Second, he was a drunk Qianli. This was the first time Gu Fei returned to the old district. He was somewhat curious. Not only were the houses broken, but there was also a foul smell in the air from time to time. The NPCs here were also disgusting. People wouldn't feel the slightest bit of pity for them living in such a harsh environment. One had to know that there were many sad NPCs in the game that made people cry. It was because they were all fake that they were designed to be pitiful and emotional. Wouldn't they feel anything if they knew they were fake? Then the TV and movies wouldn't trick people into laughing and crying. However, the old district wasn't such a place. This place seemed to be designed to make people feel disgusted. It really wasn't a place that would make people feel the slightest bit of joy. What are we doing here? Gu Fei was curious. Like any other player, he didn't have a good impression of this place. To find someone. Shi Xiaotian said. Someone or an NPC? Gu Fei needed to confirm. He didn't think that anyone would be willing to meet someone in this kind of place. People. In the end, Shi Xiaotian's answers surprised Gu Fei. Gu Fei didn't waste any more time and followed behind Shi Xiaotian. They arrived at a dilapidated courtyard where the walls were already burnt black. Shi Xiaotian seemed to be very familiar with the place. He walked directly to a part of the wall that was missing a tooth, stood on tiptoe, and poked his head in. Bam Bam, I'm here. Are you there? A reply came from the courtyard. Shi Xiaotian jumped back and continued to walk to the side. There was a hole in the wall in front of them. A person stood out and waved at Shi Xiaotian. Han Bang Bang. Shi Xiaotian walked up and introduced the person to Gu Fei. Gu Fei nodded. Do you recognize me? Shi Xiaotian asked Han Bang Bang with a smile. Qianli drunk? Han Bang Bang looked at Gu Fei. A black-cloaked mage, and Shi Xiaotian intentionally asked this question. Obviously, he was a famous person. A famous black-cloaked mage would be an idiot if he didn't guess Qianli drunk. Come in. Han Bang Bang led the two into the courtyard. Gu Fei was confused. Could this courtyard be considered a property? Did it belong to Han Bang Bang? A place like this should be the cheapest in Cloud City, right? The houses in the city are too expensive. We can't afford it, so we can only stay in this place. It's pretty secluded. Boss Qianli, please don't tell anyone about me. The last sentence was obviously a joke. It was obvious that he trusted Shi Xiaotian very much. Thus, he began to trust the people Shi Xiaotian brought with him. Love me, love my dog, love my dog. Gu Fei immediately saw the yard full of junk after entering the courtyard. There were wood shavings, paper scraps, and all kinds of strange materials that Gu Fei didn't recognize. Han Bang Bang went straight to a huge rock. The rock was about half the height of a person. It was very flat and there were a lot of things on it. It looked like a table. Halfway there, she seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and she turned around and said, Boss Qianli, I've heard about your night streak for a long time. I wonder if you can show it to me? Sure. Gu Fei took out the night streamer from his pocket. After taking a look at the map, Han Pudding ran over to a pile of broken wood and rummaged through it a few times. She then ran back to Gu Fei's side. She held something in her hand and compared it to the night streamer sword. She shook her head and said, Damn it, I knew those drawings weren't reliable. The difference is too big. The dimensions aren't right. Gu Fei almost fainted when he saw it. Han Bang Bang was holding a wooden sword, but it was obviously modeled after his night streamer. It was also colored. At first glance, Gu Fei was a little confused. However, after taking a closer look, he noticed that there were obvious differences in the size of the two swords. This was especially true for the Night Stream sword, which was an exquisite piece of equipment. Han Pudong's wooden sword didn't have a single bit of that glow. Han Bang Bang also noticed the problem. He touched the Night Streamer and said, "Ah, is this the unique glow of a top-tier equipment? This is the first time I've seen such a dark purple color. This is really a challenge." "What do you do?" Gu Fei was more or less aware, but he still couldn't help but ask. Han Putuan did not answer. He continued to study the Night Streamer in Gu Fei's hand until Gu Fei put the sword back into his pocket. Han Putuan finally withdrew his gaze, but he did not answer Gu Fei's question. Instead, he quickly took out a small notebook from his pocket and began to write on it while muttering to himself. At that moment, Gu Fei really thought he had been possessed by Brother Yu. "Who is he?" Gu Fei turned to look at Shi Xiaotian. "It's just as you thought, a counterfeit," Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei couldn't help but blurt out. As a teacher, he normally tried to avoid saying these kinds of words. As he spoke, he walked around and discovered that Han Putuan's skills were quite extraordinary. There were quite a few of his creations buried in the trash around him. The equipment made out of wood actually looked like top-tier equipment with a layer of glow on it. Players who were familiar with top-tier equipment would be able to tell the difference if they looked closely. However, Gu Fei could not understand how this effect could be artificially created. After Han Putuan finished writing in his notebook, he moved to Gu Fei's side and said, "Boss Qianli, I heard that you have a wanted license? Can you—" "No!" Gu Fei's face darkened. Gu Fei had unintentionally become an accomplice to the counterfeits. He really wanted to chop this guy up. However, when he thought about it, Han Putuan's craftsmanship and level probably had nothing to do with it. So what if he killed him? Destroy his counterfeit workshop? This thought popped into Gu Fei's mind again. It was obvious that Han Putuan needed to be discreet, but he couldn't afford a private house in the game, so he could only hide in a rundown courtyard in the old city. When Gu Fei arrived, he didn't see a single NPC around. Even players who were doing quests wouldn't set foot here, so he made this place look like his private house. Don't think too much about it. At this time, Shi Xiaotian finally came over and said, "Peng Peng is just a craftsman. His products are mainly for the sake of people like us. We're the ones who take them to the market to cheat. It has nothing to do with him. It's not a problem for him to make equipment out of wood, is it?" Gu Fei was speechless for a moment. He didn't know what to say to this counterfeit enthusiast in front of him. Humans love to make knockoffs, and in the end, knockoffs were used by others to cheat others. This was another messy account. Everyone was responsible, but it was impossible to stop it. Even if the counterfeit workshop was exposed, it wouldn't stop Han Putuan from going back to his old business. Moreover, this guy seemed to be highly valued by the scammers. If he was forced into a corner, the scammers would jointly invest in a property for him. What could they do then? Game simulation caused problems in all aspects. That Yi Xiaowu always complained that his kung fu destroyed the balance. But what about this craftsman? The Night Streak sword made from a piece of wood was almost as good as the real thing. What about this craftsman? Of course, at least he couldn't make the stats of the equipment in the game. If the buyer really wanted to appraise it seriously, he wouldn't be fooled. It all depended on the skills of the scammers like Shi Xiaotian. "Aren't you afraid that I'll expose your tricks by bringing me to a place like this?" Gu Fei glared at Shi Xiaotian. "Expose? Do you really not know, or are you just pretending to not know? This kind of scam is already at the granddaddy level. In the online gaming circle, it's been around since the birth of online games. Be careful and make sure when you make a transaction. Is this the kind of reminder you give when you expose your tricks? What a pity. This kind of reminder has been around for who knows how many years, but there are still people who fall for it. Even in the parallel world, this kind of thing has long been exposed, but what happened in the end? Putuan's business is even better. Exposing scams sometimes turns into teaching material for scams. Isn't that embarrassing?" said Shi Xiaotian. Gu Fei had to admit that Shi Xiaotian's words made sense. Since someone was doing this kind of shady business, they must have exposed it before, but Han Putuan was still doing very well and seemed to be as busy as ever. It was obvious that the exposure didn't put an end to it at all. Perhaps this problem could only be solved by the intervention of the game developers and completely removing people like Han Putuan from the game. Gu Fei looked at Han Putuan. Han Putuan was holding the notes he had taken after looking at Gu Fei's Night Streak sword. He was currently holding his counterfeit sword and pondering over it. From time to time, a confused expression would appear on his face. But no matter what, the concentration on his face made it easy to see how much he enjoyed it. Was he scamming people? No, he wasn't. He liked to make these kinds of imitations, but these kinds of imitations were useless. Which player in the game would be willing to buy such an imitation for their collection? In the end, his talent was discovered by scammers with bad intentions. Suddenly, Gu Fei felt a wave of sorrow, the sorrow of learning something useless. This sorrow was very familiar. He just wanted to have an environment where he could practice his martial arts, but Han Bianduan probably wanted to be appreciated by others for the things he loved, right? Did he really need to destroy it? Although Gu Fei repeatedly warned himself that it was completely different from whether what he did was right or wrong, when he saw Han Putuan's focused eyes, Gu Fei avoided it and even restrained himself. When he saw Han Putuan's puzzled expression, he even had the urge to lend the Night Streak sword to Han Putuan so that he could take a good look at it. Gu Fei even thought of himself. He used his kung fu without restraint in the game. Although he tried his best to limit it to the wanted quest mode, his skills in city battles and mercenary group battles also caused a lot of trouble for others. Although there were no losses when players died in those modes, to be more precise, they would not lose levels or equipment in normal PvP environments. In a competition like that, they would lose points if they died. They would lose the chance to win the competition. How could that not be a loss? Was there any difference between the effects he caused and the scammers who used Han Putuan's products to deceive people? Han Putuan relied on her craftsmanship to create a scam industry, while Han Fei relied on his martial arts to determine the outcome of a battle. In fact, most of the players who were defeated because of him weren't hateful people. Most of them were just ordinary players who weren't much different from his friends. There was no good or evil in this world. Everyone was the same. It was just a game. Hey, what are you thinking about? Shi Xiaotian went to get Han Putuan's things after he finished speaking. When he turned around, Gu Fei was still in a daze. Nothing, just something on my mind. Gu Fei said, even violent flying has something on his mind? Shi Xiaotian asked. Who doesn't? Gu Fei said, what's on your mind? Just because it's a game, you can do whatever you want. That's too simple. Gu Fei said, I know. That's why you can't do whatever you want. You want a PK, but you've always been doing wanted quests, right? Shi Xiaotian said. If only that was the case. But I've been involved in too many battles. Maybe I'm indeed a spoiler. Gu Fei said. What do you mean by, also? Shi Xiaotian said. Aren't you? Gu Fei asked. But, me too. I'm much worse than you. Shi Xiaotian said. Of course. I hope you can be modest. Shi Xiaotian said. I don't need to be modest in front of the truth. Violent flying. Liar God. They looked at each other and walked closer to each other. So, you're wrong. That's not true. Ahem, that's not true. When do I come to get the things? Shi Xiaotian turned around and asked Han Putuan. About 4 hours. Han Putuan said. Okay, I'll come back in 4 hours. Shi Xiaotian said, indicating that Gu Fei could leave. What do you want from him? Gu Fei asked. Reporter's ID. Shi Xiaotian said. What? Reporter's ID. You've been interviewed by Duo Mamuduo. It seems like they didn't show it to you. I've found out that all the reporters stationed in the game have reporter's ID. Moreover, this thing is created by the game's system and has a serial number. It's very useful. In some special times, you can even use it to apply for PK protection. It's just that if they're interviewing private players, like you, they won't be too wary, so they don't need to show their ID to prove their identity. That's why many players don't know about this. But in reality, this is the only proof of being an online reporter from a parallel world. As a studio, Ingqi should know about the existence of a reporter's ID. Moreover, they wouldn't overlook this detail that normal players wouldn't care about. It's easy to fool them with a reporter's ID. Shi Xiaotian said. It can't be? Since it's something given by the system, it'll be easy to see through it if you look carefully. Gu Fei said. At the very least, we should first see the effects of a real reporter's ID before making a conclusion. Shi Xiaotian said. Where are we going to find one? Please, can't you just borrow Duo Mamuduo's ID to take a look? Shi Xiaotian said. But what's the use of this? Gu Fei didn't understand. It won't be long before you understand. Shi Xiaotian smiled. Chapter 866. Gu Fei and Shi Xiaotian didn't spend too much time in the old city. In the mercenary channel, everyone hoped that Gu Fei could give them a live broadcast. Unfortunately, Gu Fei still wasn't used to the game's chat system and rarely used it unless it was absolutely necessary. Faced with Brother Yu and the others' shouts of, "What's the situation?" Gu Fei simply said, "Come back and talk." Everyone who was waiting for Gu Fei to come back and talk was very depressed. While they were depressed, they continued their intensive training of snatching goods. It wasn't until Gu Fei and Shi Xiaotian came back and opened the door that everyone immediately stopped and surrounded them. Nothing much. I just found someone to make a reporter's ID, said Gu Fei. Reporter's ID? Everyone was confused. Although they were all experts, the reporter's ID for online reporters in the parallel world was unprecedented in the history of online games. This belonged to another reporter's circle, so very few people knew about it. Why else would the players who were interviewed not want to see the reporter's ID? It was all because if the reporter didn't take the initiative, no one would think of it. As for the reporters, they weren't too used to this. Sometimes, as soon as the ID was reported, people would believe it. Then why bother to get the ID? Shi Xiaotian couldn't help but tell everyone about the reporter's ID. Brother Yu was extremely ashamed. Is there such a thing? How could I not know? You made a fake ID? Can this kind of thing be fooled in the game? Won't you be exposed with an appraisal spell? Sword Demon and Gu Fei also had the same question. The next step is to solve this problem. Shi Xiaotian looked at Gu Fei. They're not here right now. Gu Fei knew what she meant. She wanted to see Duo Mamuduo's reporter's ID. The others asked, Duo Mamuduo. She wants to see the effect of appraising the reporter's ID, said Gu Fei. You've already gotten a sample of the reporter's pass. How could you not know the results of the appraisal? Brother Yu was puzzled. I only inquired about some materials and sizes, but I have never seen the real thing. Shi Xiaotian said. I also have Duo Mamuduo's offline contact information, but wouldn't it be too abrupt to suddenly ask them for their press credentials and make them suspicious? Brother Yu said. Even if they have doubts, they probably can't think of anything. But just in case, there was no need to be so proactive. Weren't they also doing follow-up reports on this incident? They will definitely come to interview us again. No matter who they interview, just inform Shi Xiaotian, and we can just mention it to him. Han Family Young Master said. Sure. Shi Xiaotian nodded. Putting this matter aside for now, everyone continued to practice snatching goods. Now that everyone had gathered, everyone finally decided to try out the teleportation scroll and see its effects. The scroll was precious, but fortunately, it could last for a minute. This minute was enough to know how big the door would be and how many people could rush in the shortest amount of time. The trial was prepared to be fully enclosed and carried out in the house. One chance to use it was also given to Shi Xiaotian to let her use it to practice first. In the corner of the house, Shi Xiaotian took the scroll and made the coordinates. A group of people gathered around, and Shi Xiaotian then walked to the opposite corner. Everyone was very nervous. If this door had a limited number of people, and only one person could enter at a time, it would be a bit meaningless. I'll use it. Shi Xiaotian said solemnly as if he was about to launch a rocket. Use it. The scroll was used with a shake. Both places glowed at the same time. First, a teleportation array that was very similar to the one used to use the teleportation scroll appeared on the ground. Then, the pattern rose from the ground and instantly condensed into an oval light door. The door shone with a very deep light. Compared to the teleportation array, It was very restrained and not bright at all. Stop looking, hurry up and start. Han family young master waved his hand, and a few people who were close to the door rushed forward together. The door was really not big, and it was impossible for two people to enter side by side. However, the key was that it was very efficient. When the person on one side stepped half a leg in, Shi Xiaotian, who was guarding the other door, immediately saw the person stretch out half a leg. When the person crossed the leg, the person appeared on Shi Xiaotian's side. After seeing this clearly, Han family young master immediately said to Brother Yu, who was beside him, "Calculate the size of the door." "There is no ruler." Brother Yu was anxious. "Idiot. Find a reference object first, then find a ruler to measure the reference object later." Han family young master scolded. Brother Yu was enlightened. When he looked at the door, there was a player beside it who happened to be as tall as the door. He hurriedly memorized the face and took out his sword. He measured the maximum width of the door and made a scale. Meanwhile, Han family young master shouted, "Stop drilling, try and see if two people can pass through at the same time." "It's too small," someone said. "One of you go through by lowering your body, the other jump from above." Han family young master shouted. Now, he only wanted to know the settings of the door. At this moment, no one cared about being stepped over. Yunzhong Mu, who was closest to the door, immediately squatted down. Gu Fei, who was beside him, nodded, and Yunzhong Mu immediately lowered his body to pass through the door. Gu Fei stood up and jumped over his head. The two of them appeared perfectly beside Shi Xiaotian at the same time. "Try the other side." Han family young master shouted again. Someone hurriedly looked at the other side of the door, but he couldn't tell the difference. He stretched out his leg, and the door on Shi Xiaotian's side revealed its leg again. However, this time, it was on the other side. "This is great. The efficiency is doubled." Yunzhong Mu was delighted. "What else do you want to try?" The others looked at Han family young master. "Try it with 3 people." Han family young master's requirements were getting higher and higher. However, this seemed to be a little more difficult. Who could guarantee that they wouldn't crash into each other when they flew like Gu Fei did? They weren't doing acrobatics. Unscathed in battle suddenly had an idea. He patted his shoulder and said, "2 of you come up." The others were stunned, but they immediately understood what he meant. In the game, a level 40 warrior's strength was higher than that of a normal person's. It wasn't a problem for him to carry 2 people at the same time. Thus, one person climbed onto Unscathed in Battle's back, and another person climbed onto his back. Unscathed in Battle's equipment was good, and it increased his strength by quite a bit. The 2 of them felt relaxed, so they shouted, "One more, try 4." The person beside them didn't stand on ceremony. With one jump, he went up. The 4 of them stacked together, and one by one, they hugged their necks. Unscathed in Battle, who was at the bottom, was also struggling. He couldn't even see his waist anymore. However, the spectators were inhumane. They laughed and urged him. Unscathed in Battle was already standing in front of the door. He didn't have any way to go. He took a step forward, and with one leg, 4 heads immediately appeared on the other side of the door. The 4 of them turned their heads and saw that behind the other side of the door, their bodies were still stuck up. It was indescribably weird. "Okay, 4 is fine. It seems like there's no limit to this skill as long as you have a way," Brother Yu announced. "Yup." Han family young master nodded and didn't give any new instructions. 1 minute passed quickly, and the 2 doors disappeared on time. "Make a door frame by imitating its size. We'll take our time to study it," Han family young master said. Brother Yu nodded, and then asked the player who made the reference, "Brother, how tall are you?" 183 meters. The person replied. "Do you count the shoes?" Brother Yu asked for perfection. "I didn't count them when I measured them," the person said. "Let me look at the heels of your shoes," Brother Yu said. "Fuck, it can't be that bad, right?" "Scholar's cloth boots. They're not high enough." Brother Yu immediately recognized the equipment and remembered the height. Then he waved his marking sword at Han family young master. "I'll find someone to make the door now." Han family young master nodded. "It seems like 4 people is the limit." If both sides work at the same time, the fastest we can get through is 8 people, Cloud Twilight said. 8. Han family young master repeated. This teleportation door couldn't be removed by the other side. Everyone was worried about the speed at which the other side removed the authority. If it was as fast as Sword Demon, then even 8 people wouldn't be able to enter. The people who entered, in order to extend their time in the room, had to immediately disband the team after entering. After disbanding the team, no one else could enter. However, if they took the risk to enter more people and the other side removed the authority, then under this team mode, the entire team would be wiped out. In the end, there wouldn't even be 8 people. You'll be the team leader at that time. You know the key, right? Han family young master looked at Shi Xiaotian. I know. I'll try my best to fight for it, Shi Xiaotian said. The authority to manage the room can't be shared with more than one person. In Chi's new warehouse is 100% in the hands of their boss, Matchless Genius. No matter what method we use, as long as we can distract him, even if it's just for a few seconds, we might be able to get 8 more people in. Han family young master said. I'll act according to the situation, Shi Xiaotian said. The young master of the Han family nodded, and the others came to a sudden realization. It was no wonder that the young master of the Han family hadn't taken it too seriously when the sword ghost had removed his authority so quickly that no one had been able to enter. In reality, he had to find an opportunity to use the scroll. If he had shaken the scroll right under someone's nose, the other party's reaction would have been so fast that they wouldn't even have had time to teleport. It seemed like it wouldn't be a problem to teleport 8 people in. 8 people, they should be able to move quite a bit, right? Everyone thought to themselves. Everyone continue practicing. When Brother Yu comes back with the door, we'll practice the teleportation. Han family young master said as he sent a message to Brother Yu, make a few more. Understood. There were all kinds of craftsmen in the game. Although these circles weren't difficult, they could only be made by hand. The asking price for such things was usually very high, but it was very overpowered. What was lacking now was money. Brother Yu brought back 5 circles not long after he went. Everyone took a look, and it was indeed the same size as the previous teleportation door. Even the arcs looked the same. Everyone exclaimed. Stop talking nonsense, practice. Brother Yu passed the circles to everyone. Everyone in the room tidied up and fixed the 5 circles in the middle. They started practicing how to quickly and effectively pass 4 people. I think we can confirm the number of people now. Under these circumstances, it's already not bad to get 16 people in. Any more and it won't end well. Let's choose 16. Han family young master said. Chapter 867. There weren't any strict requirements for the candidates. Everyone was just going to move the goods. Time was of the essence, and the weights were not important. No matter how slow Peerless Genius was, it wouldn't take too long for him to clear 16 people. Therefore, it was impossible for everyone to fill their bags with enough weights, so the faster they moved, the better. Apart from that, they also needed to have a good eye and pick up good equipment. Even though the equipment in the warehouse wouldn't be ordinary blue and white equipment, there were always better ones. There wasn't much to worry about in this aspect. Even Yun Zhongmu's brothers had this kind of eyesight. This was common sense. In comparison, the expert among experts, Gu Fei had a lot of problems in this aspect. However, the Han family young master didn't have any intention of giving Gu Fei extra lessons. Gu Fei had to go this time, but his mission was different. When the teleportation was complete, other than Matchless Genius removing his authority, if there were any players from the Eagle group present, they would definitely use battle tactics to obstruct him. While Gu Fei was casually picking up things, dealing with these people was his important mission. But this way, I'll probably be kicked out by Matchless Genius very quickly. Gu Fei said, that's also good. We have to specifically pick out one person from the list. This way, we can waste a bit of his time. You don't have to worry that you're worthless. The Han family young master was very thoughtful. Gu Fei was speechless. He felt that this was the truth. Relying on him to block the Eagle group was most likely just an excuse. Duo Mu Duo is online. Gu Fei suddenly noticed the system notification. Things were progressing step by step. Yup, he's online. Brother Yu also nodded. He also had a friend on his side, but he didn't know when he added him. They'll definitely find them. The Han family young master was confident. Does anyone here have a friend? He added us. Yutian Shenming and the others all expressed their opinions. Even Yun Zhongmu, who didn't cooperate much with the interview, was added by Duo Mu Duo. At this time, Sword Demon spoke. Everyone looked over. He didn't add you? Han family young master asked. No, I've already found him. The Sword Demon smiled. Duo Mu Duo was really dedicated. As soon as he got online, he immediately went straight to the target he wanted to interview. Just make an appointment. Han family young master said. Sword Demon nodded and sent a message to Duo Mumu. Duo Mumuduo had always been afraid that the interviewee would refuse. Seeing that the other party had agreed, how could he be picky about the meeting place? Naturally, he flew over without saying a word. When they arrived at Very Defying Heaven's mansion, they saw that all of Very Defying Heaven's mansion's core experts were present. Even Yun Zhongmu was present. Duo Mumudwa was even more ecstatic. Any one of them would be able to reveal incredible information. Duo Mumu politely greeted everyone and focused on chatting with Sword Demon. Even if he really wanted to interview other people, there had to be a process. When he came over and saw that there was a better target, he immediately threw Sword Demon aside. Duo Mumu Mudwa couldn't do such an excessive thing. Sword Demon didn't hesitate. He first got down to business. After exchanging a few words with Duo Mumu Mudwa, he immediately asked about the reporter's ID. Yes, of course. Duo Mumu Mudwa didn't hesitate. This reporter ID was for them to prove their identity. It wasn't some mysterious thing. It was just that this was the first time something like this had ever happened in the history of online games, so even these two experienced reporters hadn't gotten into the habit of showing their ID during interviews. If it wasn't for Sword Demon taking the initiative to mention it, they would have forgotten about such a tool 80% of the time. At this time, when Sword Demon said it, the two didn't hesitate at all and immediately took it out. A group of people came up to watch curiously, and Shi Xiaotian was undoubtedly at the best angle and the most suitable position to observe. This reporter's ID was the same model as Gu Fei's wanted license, but the size was slightly different. Duo Mumu had already taken the initiative to show it to everyone. Inside was his organization, Fun Gaming Network. Then there was the reporter's name, gender, ID number, reporter's ID number, date of issuance, and so on. It really looked like a regular ID. The only funny part was the name. Duo Mumu's real name was first, and then there was his online reporter's pen name, Duo Mumu. Everyone didn't bat an eyelid. They pretended to be curious and asked all sorts of questions. In reality, they just wanted to give Shi Xiaotian more time to observe. Brother Yu actually didn't know about the reporter's ID. He felt like he had lost an adult. At this time, he was taking notes at the side. He almost directly snatched the reporter's ID. Hey, this is fun. Can I play with it? Yutian Shenming talked nonsense. I'm afraid that's not possible. This is the same as the guild badge. It can't be traded. Duo Mumu said. Then how do we get this thing? Han family young master took the opportunity to ask. Freedom of the press. Nowadays, more and more people are paying attention to things that happen in the virtual world. Us online reporters aren't any different from those sports reporters or entertainment reporters. Don't think that this ID is a virtual item. It was issued by the General Administration of Press and Publication. Of course, we can only use this in the game. We also have official documents. Duo Mumu said. When everyone heard this, they understood why this ID looked so formal. It wasn't something that the game company had control over. It was probably something that was forced to be designed. However, they weren't really interested in this. They were just looking for a topic to waste some time. However, now that they heard that this ID was really formal, they couldn't help but feel a bit more suspicious. Shi Xiaotian didn't say anything. They didn't know if she had seen enough, so they continued to talk. With just this one ID, a bunch of people surrounded him and asked all sorts of questions. At first, it could be said that they were curious, but if they continued, it would seem that they didn't know the world. The normal things that could be asked were all asked. The questions gradually became childish and young. Everyone was in pain when they finally saw Shi Xiaoyan nod her head slightly, clearly indicating that they had enough. Everyone finally let out a sigh of relief and dispersed. In the end, Duo Mumu and Mudwa were at a loss. They had been patiently chatting with everyone about this ID mainly because these people could be said to be news figures in the game. Duo Mumu wanted to work hard to establish a friendly relationship with them. Just as he felt that they were getting along well, a bunch of people suddenly became cold and uninterested. Did he say something wrong? Sword Demon saw that everyone was retreating so irresponsibly, causing the two reporters to be so stunned. He hurriedly said, "Why are you two looking for me?" Duo Mumu came back to his senses. While collecting his ID, he began the official interview. Next, Duo Mumu Mudwa was left to the Sword Ghost to deal with. At this time, the others had something on their minds. After looking at the reporter's ID, they did not pay much attention to Duo Mumu Mudwa. The more questions there were, the more annoyed everyone became. They wished they could just beat him up with their clubs. Unfortunately, the kind and honest Sword Ghost was really there to answer their questions. "How is it?" In a corner of the room, Gu Fei asked Shi Xiaotian. The Han family young master was also very concerned about this key to success or failure. "What do you mean, how is it?" Shi Xiaotian asked. "Can you make it?" Gu Fei asked. "Aren't you going with me?" Shi Xiaotian asked in reply. "Making a fake is of course very simple. Now I'm thinking about how to deal with the appraisal." I insisted on looking at Duo Mumu's ID. In fact, what I really want to see is not the ID, but what will be shown after the appraisal. "It doesn't seem to be showing anything," Gu Fei said. "Yes, the information shown is very simple. It says that it's the ID and the serial number. However, the simpler it is, the easier it is to find loopholes," Shi Xiaotian said. "What loopholes?" "Loopholes in the fake identification information," Shi Xiaotian said. "This can be faked?" Gu Fei was surprised. "Yes." Shi Xiaotian nodded, took out a piece of paper, and wrote a few words on the wall. Then he showed it to Gu Fei. "You appraise it." Gu Fei appraised it and read the content. A piece of paper with ID G28900780112646 written on it. "Do you understand?" Shi Xiaotian said. Gu Fei and the Han family young master were not stupid. Of course, they immediately understood. Although there was a lot of extra content in the identification information, these scammers probably had other ways to fix it. "I won't say much, I'll go do it now. You guys can see how it turns out," Shi Xiaotian said. The two nodded. "Do you still want to go?" Shi Xiaotian asked Gu Fei. "I don't think so." Gu Fei did not have much interest in the scammer skills. Shi Xiaotian nodded and left. Gu Fei, on the other hand, was still in a daze. The Han family's young master was drinking by the side. The others had seen the conversation between the two of them and Shi Xiaotian, and they were all asking about the situation in the channel. The online reporter in this game is actually an official one. Now, you can fake your ID and pretend to be a reporter. Is this still a game? Gu Fei suddenly said. "Of course, we only exist in this world and will never enter reality," Han family young master said. "Is there really no restrictions in this world?" Gu Fei sighed. "Yeah, you executioner," the Han family young master mocked. "I only do wanted missions." Gu Fei was dissatisfied. "That's just you restraining yourself, it's not the world restraining you. If you don't do that..." The Han family young master unexpectedly paused. He hesitated for a moment before saying, "Damn, you're arrogant to an unprecedented degree. If you don't restrain yourself, I think the game company will definitely do justice and destroy you." "What's the standard of the game company?" Gu Fei asked. "Game company?" The Han family young master's face once again showed a mocking smile. "It's all business." "Hey, you too." The others finally couldn't take it anymore. Everyone asked about the ID and how Shi Xiaotian would handle it, but the two of them ignored them and just stood there chatting. Unable to take it anymore, they ignored Mudwa's gaze and directly surrounded them. Chapter 868. How could Han family young master have the patience to explain Shi Xiaotian's concept to everyone? In the end, Gu Fei could only kindly explain it to everyone. He even learned from Shi Xiaotian and took out a piece of paper to demonstrate. Those who weren't idiots basically understood it. Those who had a strong sense of crisis, like Brother Yu, had already reminded themselves to be careful in future market transactions. Those who were a bit more despicable and shameless had already shrunk to a corner to discuss how they could do something in this area. Moreover, the topic of discussion had also spread. Everyone exchanged the scams they had seen along the way. Brother Yu loved to talk about these gossipy stories and became the most active among the experts. Duo Mudwa's interview was almost over. Sword Demon was the one who avoided the most in this incident. He basically spent the entire time in jail. Although he was the guild leader, he couldn't talk about it from the perspective of a participant. He couldn't talk about any interesting details. In addition, he wasn't good at gossiping. His concise answers were enough to get rid of most of the questions that Duo Mudwa had prepared. From Sword Demon's concise answers, Duo Mudwa didn't develop any new questions. After asking the last question, the two's eyes began to wander around the other experts. They looked like players who had seen a rich boss. However, he discovered that these guys completely ignored them. Duo Mudwa tactfully didn't make any more moves. Although professional reporters needed to be shameless, it was useless at the moment. This was a game. There was no way to stay and not leave. This was someone else's private house. If they removed your authority, you would have no choice but to scram. There was no need to say too much nonsense. Can you answer another one of our questions? Duo Mudwa still tried to fight for it before he left. No one answered. They just looked at the two of them. In-Chi Studio was poached by Yun Teng Studio. Is this related to the conflict between you and In-Chi Studio? Domo asked. Of course it's related. Han family young master replied. Duo Mu's eyes lit up. The conflict between In-Chi Studio and us shows how despicable and shameless they are. Such despicable and shameless people will definitely suffer retribution. Look, retribution is coming soon. Han family young master said. Duo Mu smiled bitterly. So the other party was just joking with him. He guessed that there was a connection between the two matters, but unfortunately, he could not verify it. Right now, this group of people did not seem prepared to reveal it. Duo Mu could only nod helplessly and say, so that's how it is. Then he left with Mu Duo. Alright. Now that the preparations are in place, let's hurry up and practice. The Han family young master began to give instructions. The portal frames were moved out one after another. Everyone practiced hard while waiting for Shi Xiaotian's final results. Time passed slower and slower, and the boring practice made everyone more and more listless. At this time, they needed some good news. Finally, they waited for Shi Xiaotian's return. Come, have a look. Shi Xiaotian showed her ID as soon as she entered the door. The reporter ID was exactly the same as the one Duo Mu and Mu Duo had shown before. Yutian Shenming relied on his eagle eyes and was very good at capturing information. He scanned the name on it and asked excitedly, Sister Tin, is this your real name? No, Shi Xiaotian is my real name. Shi Xiaotian answered him. Then this? I made it up. On Shi Xiaotian's fake reporter ID, her real name was a fake name, but her game ID was her real name. At this time, some people who had already used appraisal techniques were shocked. How did you do it? In the appraisal results, they only saw the reporter ID and a serial number. Results like the piece of paper that Gu Fei had demonstrated earlier were not shown. What else are you holding in your hand? Gu Fei suddenly asked. Shi Xiaoyan was surprised. How do you know? I can tell by looking at the shape of your hand. Gu Fei's observation in this aspect was unparalleled. Amazing. Shi Xiaotian was also convinced. What's wrong with the shape of my hand? The others were still confused, but the Han family young master had already seen some clues. Is there something else blocking in front of you and replacing the identification of the fake reporter ID? Shi Xiaotian nodded. Self-made equipment? The Han family young master continued to speculate. Hearing this term, the others also reacted. In the game, the equipment made by the player's life skills were called self-made equipment. The biggest feature of self-made equipment was that the creator had the right to name it, which was a manifestation of the game's personalization. Therefore, it was not too surprising that a low-level white heavy sword was called Heaven-Destroying and Earth-Shattering Divine Sword, or something. Players could not make the attributes of Heaven-Destroying and Earth-Shattering, but they could still come up with this kind of name to satisfy their craving. The thing in Shi Xiaoyan's hand was obviously named Reporter ID G29000548114685. Why can't we see it? Is this equipment invisible? Someone was confused. Everyone here was experienced and knowledgeable. Invisible equipment? They had never heard of it. It's only temporary, Shi Xiaotian said. Oh, skill equipment? Everyone came to a realization. That's not right. Even if it's self-made equipment, it shouldn't be blank except for the name after identification. What about the equipment type? Attributes? Someone said. Display settings. We can choose the content to be displayed. Leaving only the name is possible. Brother, you had already thought of it and took a deep breath. Good point. Shi Xiaotian nodded. At this moment, the skill time of the thing in his hand seemed to have run out, and its true form was revealed. It was a shield. The fake reporter ID was blocked by it, and there was no angle that could be identified. Although the skill would be invisible when used, it couldn't fool the appraisal skill. In the end, it worked with the appraisal skill and became a flawless deception. It's indeed brilliant. Everyone nodded. Self-made equipment, additional skills, and display settings when setting up a stall were all reasonable functions in the game. Under the effective deployment, it produced such a fake effect. This method can't be seen through at all. Everyone put themselves in Shi Xiaoyan's shoes and felt that it was terrifying. As long as no one touches the shield, Shi Xiaotian said. Everyone looked again and felt that this possibility was basically impossible. This was because the shield itself was very small, and if one didn't reach out toward Shi Xiaotian, it would be impossible to touch it. Obviously, no one would do such a thing because the reporter ID couldn't be traded. It would be fine to just hold it in one's hand and show it to others. There wouldn't be such a process. Is the additional skill evading? Brother, you like to confirm. Yes, you know about it? Of course, it lasts for 15 seconds and has a cooldown of 3.5 minutes. Even if the skill comes into contact with it, it won't be immediately interrupted like a thief's stealth or vanish skill. If it's attached to a weapon, it's seen as a godly skill by many. But up until now, the attributes of the weapons that have this skill have been too mediocre. So although there are godly skills, there aren't any godly weapons. You have this skill enchantment scroll, but it's actually attached to a shield. What a pity. Brother, you said as he shook his head. The others also sighed. Who said it's an enchantment skill? Self-made equipment will often come with additional skills, don't you know that? Shi Xiaotian said. Is that so? Of course, everyone knew, but when Shi Xiaotian went out and brought back such an item, everyone thought that she went out to custom make it. Naturally, they thought that she attached the evading enchantment scroll that many people dreamed of to a shield. After all this time, this shield was a ready-made item? But this was still something to be angry about. Sometimes, the system would make such a mistake, placing godly skills in places where they were useless or had limited value. It made people want to die. The preparations on my side are basically complete. We can contact the other party at any time. How are your preparations? Shi Xiaotian asked. It's about time. Through the portal, at least 8 people can enter at one time. There's no problem with speed. Right now, we just hope that you can find an opportunity to buy some time so that 8 more people can enter. Han family young master said. How much time do you need? 3 seconds. Han family young master said. 3 seconds was obviously a very short amount of time, but to remove the authority, this process could be completed in 1 second. Comparing the two, 3 seconds was a very long time. If they waited for these 3 seconds, It was very likely that the other party would remove the authority and kick them out as a team. I'll find an opportunity, Shi Xiaotian said. Do we need to start now? Han family young master looked at everyone. We've long since prepared, everyone said. What about the target? You haven't told me yet, Shi Xiaotian said. I've already arranged this. It's the manager of Inky Studio in Danma City. This person's name is 3-second area. You'll be able to find him through the following connections. Han family young master said as he handed over a piece of paper. These connections are all real. We'll help you greet them when the time comes. You'll be able to meet 3-second area. The rest is up to you. The layers of connections that the Han family's young master had pulled were naturally done through Yun Teng's side. A large number of Ingqi's people had arrived at Yun Teng, but they still maintained their relationships with the players who stayed behind in Ingqi. This 3-second zone was one of the people who didn't choose to jump ship during the recruitment storm. Young Master Han didn't choose him randomly either. He learned about the situation of the remaining workers in Ingqi through the nitrite radicals. With Inky's structure, there weren't many managers who could directly contact the boss, unparalleled genius. In the process, they had to go through the director, and there was only one director left, Wu Yi. There were also some managers under Wu Yi who stayed behind, but Han family young master didn't choose Wu Ye's subordinates, nor did he choose a manager who could directly contact unparalleled genius. He chose 3-second area. Through 3-second area's network, he could also contact unparalleled genius. Compared to Wu Ye's subordinates, contacting unparalleled genius's manager was a lot more complicated, but it was more logical. Han family young master wasn't in a hurry. He needed a foolproof plan. Chapter 869. Shi Xiaotian carefully looked at the interpersonal relationship in the 3-second zone that the Han family young master provided her and asked a few more questions. These were all things that the Han family young master had learned long ago. Intelligent people were always more relaxed when conversing. In just a few words, the questions and answers were all straight to the point, without a single word of nonsense. After understanding the situation, Shi Xiaotian was also impressed. This 3-second zone is indeed the best choice. This is the teleportation scroll for Danma City. The Han family young master handed a scroll to Shi Xiaotian. Teleport there directly. To prevent any accidents, our people will not have any contact with you anymore. Keep in touch with all news. That's for the best. Shi Xiaoyan took the scroll. Then you can go now, the Han family young master said. Yuqian Shinming immediately rushed out and cheered, Little Sister Tian, you can do it. Shi Xiaotian smiled and nodded, and used the scroll to teleport over. On the other hand, the Han family young master immediately contacted Nitrite, so that the connection on his side could be activated. Nitrite's ability to understand the spirit of the Han family young master was very strong now. He was already prepared, and immediately started to make arrangements. With the complicated network laid out layer by layer, Shi Xiaotian's appearance could not be related to the heaven-defying nature in any way. At this time, Shi Xiaotian had already set foot on the land of Danma City. Ingqi's main city supervisor was still here, so all business naturally went on as usual. Shi Xiaotian looked up and saw that there was a grocery store with Ingqi's name on the street next to him. Shi Xiaoyan was not in a hurry to go there. She was waiting for news from the Han family young master. There would be people in the 3-second zone who would greet Shi Xiaotian through a circle, which could be considered as a referral to Shi Xiaotian. The person who greeted him took the interview seriously, so there was no need to worry about the stranger revealing any flaws. Nitrite was already an irreconcilable rival of Ingqi. He was like an insulator. His true intentions stopped here because he himself did not know. He only knew that the Han family young master wanted to make things difficult for Ingqi, so he did his best to help the Han family young master. He hoped to see a good show, but he didn't want to stand on the stage himself. He was willing to be the hero behind the scenes. As for the Han family young master's arrangement, Shi Xiaotian would come to him immediately after receiving the news in the 3-second zone. The message that 3-second zone received was nothing more than a reminder, something along the lines of, so-and-so asked me about you, and it seems like they want to interview you. This kind of message was meant to make 3-second zone feel less abrupt, and whether he accepted the interview or not could not be rejected through this message. At this time, Shi Xiaotian was already at his door. It was up to Shi Xiaotian to fight for everything. The message has been sent, find a suitable time to come. The Han family young master finally sent a message. The transmission of information in the game was very fast. As long as there was no offline segment, it would only take a few minutes. Okay. Shi Xiaotian replied. The moment the message arrived, the person came. It was too fast. Shi Xiaotian had already left the street and walked from another direction. She would ask the players on the road from time to time. From this moment onwards, she had really become a reporter. The grocery store appeared in front of Shi Xiaotian again. According to the information, this grocery store was the main office of the manager of the 3-second zone. Ying Qi would usually handle his business in Danmas. Shi Xiaotian didn't hesitate at all. When she saw the name of the store, she walked straight towards it. The doors of the store were obviously wide open, but Shi Xiaotian still knocked on the door and asked, "Is Mr. 3-second zone here?" The grocery store wasn't big, but it was very tidy. A player was standing behind the counter. When he heard Shi Xiaotian's question, he couldn't help but look towards a corner. There was a square table in the corner, and a person was writing something on it. He raised his head and looked at Shi Xiaotian. When he saw Shi Xiaotian look over, he replied, "That's me. Hello, I'm a reporter from Fun Gaming website. My name is Shi Xiaotian." Shi Xiaotian officially began. 3-second zone had already received the news from the Han family young master, so he wasn't surprised by Shi Xiaotian's visit. He just looked at Shi Xiaotian and asked, "What's the matter?" "Recently, there seems to have been a lot of disputes between your studio and the players. Many things have happened. We at Fun Games have been following up on this matter. I'm here to interview you," said Shi Xiaotian. "That didn't happen here, so I'm not too sure." 3-second zone replied. Shi Xiaotian said helplessly, "I know, it happened in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City. We tried to contact the person in charge there, but we found out that the person in charge of the main city had chosen to resign at this time. Later, we found out that it was not only the people in Cloud City and Moonlit Night City who had resigned. Some of them have already been interviewed by us. Because of this, we want to be responsible and interview the people who are still working here." "What do you mean?" 3-second zone frowned. "To be honest, the things that the people who resigned described in the interview are probably not what you want to hear. We think that since they are people who resigned, there might be a lot of things that they said. That's why we came to you, a person who is still working here, to hear the voices of the people who are still working here," Shi Xiaotian said. 3-second zone immediately understood what he meant. It seemed that these people who resigned didn't say anything good about their old company during the interview. Although not everyone was so unkind, there were still people like this. 3-second zone had heard that during the director's weekly meeting, there was a director who jumped out to express his dissatisfaction with the boss. He even said it to his face, not to mention behind his back. This was a public relations crisis. 3-second zone instantly realized it. And it was rare for a reporter from Fun Gaming website to be so kind. If they weren't kind, they would have reported those people who said bad things first to attract attention. Why would they care about the truth? This meant that they couldn't neglect the reporter's visit. This was their chance to clear their name. Since 3-second zone stayed, he was naturally thinking for Ying Qi. After understanding Shi Xiaotian's meaning, he couldn't help but ask, "What did they say?" "I can't say," Shi Xiaotian said. "But because we want to hear your objective and honest voice. We don't want to have a conflict because of their words," Shi Xiaotian said. "Oh, then what do you want to know from me?" 3-second zone had already started spreading the news when he asked this. This was a public relations crisis. A large number of people from Ying Qi had left, and the people who resigned were publicly exposed. If this news was publicly reported, how would it affect the players? One had to know that these people who resigned were the higher-ups of Ying Qi. Ying Qi didn't have any secrets with them. If they really wanted to speak, there were too many things they could say. And now that they were all working for a competitor, if it was arranged by the competitor to smear Ying Qi, then it would be even harder to explain. Of course, it was impossible to shut these people up. This matter could only be carried out through the media. It was rare that fun gaming website didn't interview and report step by step. Instead, they conducted an objective interview from both sides. Otherwise, if they first reported on these people who resigned, it would undoubtedly make things worse for Ing-Chi. 3-Second Zone didn't have confidence in such a big crisis. At the same time, he felt that he didn't have the right to handle it. He could only think of a way to contact his superiors. His direct director had already resigned after this incident, and from the departing director, he already knew that Five Nights was the only director left in the entire studio. Furthermore, he also heard from the people in charge of the other main cities that Five Nights was temporarily the chief supervisor of all the main cities. The handover in each city was in progress, and the 3-Second Zone just hadn't had its turn yet. Through these connections, it wasn't hard for 3-Second Zone to contact Five Nights. He opened his friend list and sent out the message. Not long after, he received a notification from the system that Five Nights had added him as a friend. He immediately sent a message, "What's going on?" 3-Second Zone hurriedly explained. Five Nights was furious. He had always felt like he was abandoned on a big boat. And now, not only did they abandon him, they even wanted to sink his boat. It was as if they weren't giving him a way out. Shameless. Despicable. Five Nights was furious. "What do we do now?" 3-Second Zone asked. "Is he still with you?" Five Nights asked. "Yes." "You deal with him first. I have to contact the boss." Five Nights said. This was a big matter. How could he dare to make a decision? Right now, Unparalleled Genius wasn't online. He could only go offline to contact him. He was still calculating. That resigned supervisor was so annoying in Five Nights' eyes. He threw down a, "Something urgent, I'll be back in a bit," and ran away. 3-Second Zone started to stall for time with Shi Xiaotian. He said he wanted to treat Shi Xiaotian to a meal. Everyone chatted while eating. Shi Xiaotian declined. 3-Second Zone was so insistent. Shi Xiaotian had no choice but to agree. After leaving the door, 3-Second Zone immediately brought Shi Xiaotian to the restaurant that was the furthest from their grocery store. On the way, when Shi Xiaotian asked some small questions, 3-Second Zone would only answer after careful consideration. He especially liked to use words like, "I personally think." Shi Xiaotian knew that 3-Second Zone was pretending. Wasn't she the same? She could already tell that 3-Second Zone was stalling for time. He was avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. He must have already contacted someone with more authority. And right now, there were only two people who had more authority than the person in charge of Ing-Chi. The operation went very smoothly. Ing-Chi's current situation forced their boss to stand on the front line. Chapter 870. Five Nights quickly went offline and contacted his boss, Unparalleled Wonder. Unparalleled Wonder took the news very seriously. Studios like Age-Chi naturally valued their reputation and image in the eyes of the players. This was also the main competition between large studios. If their image was ruined, it would be extremely detrimental to the long-term development of the studio. Age-Chi was most worried about the players having a bad impression of them after messing around with the 10 Guilds Alliance. Fortunately, the 10 Guilds Alliance was not successful in manipulating the public opinion. Age-Chi got some professional gunmen and quickly gained the upper hand. However, the current situation was different. This was leaked by someone who had left Eagle. It didn't matter if it was true or not, it would be easy for the players to believe it. Moreover, this wasn't just a rumor on the forums, but an official report from a professional gaming media. The weight of this news was not to be underestimated. Is the situation reliable? Unparalleled Wonder asked Five Nights on the phone as he prepared to enter the game. The manager of Danma City is in contact with the other party. It sounds like it's true, Five Nights replied. Let's go take a look first. Unparalleled Wonder hung up the phone and entered the game. Five Nights did the same, and he had already prepared a teleportation scroll. After waiting for the boss, the two of them immediately teleported to Danma City. 3-Second Zone was relieved that the two of them arrived so quickly. However, he could not take back his promise to treat them to a meal, but at least he did not have to go to the other side of the city. 3-second zone estimated a restaurant that was about the same distance between them. After informing the other party, he changed his route and brought Shi Xiaotian over. The restaurant food in the game was still mainly meat with various fruits. There was no possibility of Chinese food appearing for the time being. It was said that the alchemists were constantly working on it. The players were at a loss. How did the alchemists get involved in the cooking system? This was too confusing. 3-second zone and Shi Xiaotian arrived first. After asking for Shi Xiaotian's opinion, he asked for a fruit platter and recommended their Danmas city's special barbecue. The so-called special barbecue was nothing more than the monsters in Danmas city. It could not be found in other places. At the end of the day, only animals would be eaten by players. Players simply couldn't bring themselves to eat humanoid creatures, let alone elemental creatures, demons, and ghosts. Hence, their choices were rather limited. None of them were really here to eat. Shi Xiaotian didn't mind at all, and he even dealt with the 3-second zone. After ordering, he couldn't help but look at the door. Not long after, he saw Matchless Wonder and 5 Knights. Ing Chi's director's regular meeting had also been held in Danmas City, so the 3 seconds area had seen the boss and the director. 3 seconds hurriedly stood up and said to Shi Xiaotian with a smile, "Great reporter Shi, you're in luck." Our Ing Chi's boss and Wu Ye's director personally rushed over when they heard that you wanted to interview them. Really? Shi Xiaotian was pleasantly surprised. Matchless Wonder and 5 Knights wasted no time in walking up to them. Shi Xiaotian's lack of recognition was the truth, and 3-second zone quickly introduced them to each other. "Miss Shi, are you a reporter from FunNet?" Matchless Wonder said nonsensically. As if Shi Xiaotian continued to be excited. "Then Duo Mamuduo is your colleague?" Matchless Wonder asked. "That's right. Boss, do you think I don't have enough weight? That's not a problem. I can contact them immediately, and they will be more than happy to interview you. If we knew that you would be interviewed personally, I think the website would have sent them." There's no need to go through so much trouble. It's all the same, all the same." Matchless Wonder laughed. 5 Knights sent a message at the side. "If Duo Mamuduo publishes a draft, the weight will be higher, and it might be better, right?" Matchless Wonder saw this message and just smiled. He replied to 5 Knights, "Since they're tracking and interviewing people, how can they publish a draft under the name of a certain reporter? This is the website's overall operation. It doesn't matter which reporter it is." "Oh, that's right." 5 Knights suddenly understood. "Miss Shi, can I trouble you to take a look at your reporter ID?" Matchless Wonder asked. "That's right. If you didn't mention it, I would have forgotten." Shi Xiaotian immediately went to get his reporter ID. She was very familiar with the technique of hiding behind the shield. When she showed it to Gu Fei and the others, Gu Fei only saw a flaw in her hand shape, but didn't notice anything unusual about her movements. In terms of hand shape, Shi Xiaoan had also learned about it from Gu Fei. Now that he had corrected it, it could be said that it was watertight. Of course, it was inevitable that he would be a little nervous, but the so-called professional quality meant that no matter how nervous he was, his facial expression would be as flawless as the technique. The skill lasted for 15 seconds. What Shi Xiaotian was most worried about was that these 15 seconds weren't enough for these people to appreciate. In theory, this was impossible. There was no point in looking at the ID in the game. Only appraisal skills could determine everything. This reporter ID only had a few words, so it shouldn't take 15 seconds. It was possible that these people had never seen a reporter ID before, so they were curious about the content and kept looking at it. Shi Xiaotian was silently counting down in her heart. She had decided to put away the shield before 15 seconds. She believed that this was enough time for these people to appraise the content of the reporter ID. After that, they could look at the content of the reporter ID as much as they wanted. In the end, such a dangerous situation did not occur. The fact that this was the result of the appraisal proved that the document was genuine. As for the content on the document, it could be easily scanned. Matchless Hero was not in the mood to waste his curiosity on this. After confirming the authenticity of the document, he nodded and Shi Xiaotian put it away. 5 Nights and 3 Second Zone naturally wouldn't say anything. Their boss had already nodded. Many players don't know about this, and we don't have the habit of showing it to others. The boss really isn't an ordinary person, Shi Xiaotian said as she put away the shield and reporter ID. Hee, I have some reporter friends, so I know that this ID exists in the game, Matchless Wonder said. These words caused Shi Xiaotian's heart to skip a beat. The information from the Han family young master said that In Chi's studio didn't interact much with in-game reporters, but Matchless Wonder had personally said that he had reporter friends. It seemed like there was an oversight. She didn't know if this oversight would cause any trouble, but from the looks of it, Matchless Wonder trusted her completely. At this time, the 2 dishes that 3 Second Zone ordered were served. Matchless Wonder glanced at them and said, "The food in the game isn't that great, Miss Shi, you should just put up with it. If the conditions allow, I can treat Miss Shi to a feast. Where are you from, Miss Shi?" Their conversations slowly began to flow. Shi Xiaotian's preparations for the day weren't for nothing. She had already planned out how to lead to the topic she wanted. Starting from the topic that 3 Second Zone had mentioned, she would slowly move on. She would also ask some questions based on Matchless Wonder's answers. Some of the more sensitive and awkward questions were asked by Shi Xiaotian without any hesitation. She acted like she was being objective as she walked towards her destination. Right now, the outside world is saying that In Chi will never be able to recover from this setback, but from your attitude, it doesn't seem like that's the case. After discussing the various dangers that In Chi was facing, Shi Xiaotian brought the topic to this place. Of course, although the other side used unfair methods to cause us to lose a large amount of talent, the foundation of In Chi's studio is still there. There are tens of thousands of frontline workers. As long as they are here, our resources will continue to be replenished. Moreover, the loss of talent and the 10 Guild Alliance's actions didn't affect our resources at all. If any player has any needs, they can contact us and we will definitely give them a satisfactory answer. Tell me, how can our studio be affected? I heard that a large number of the higher-ups left In Chi's stable customers. Shi Xiaotian said. Nonsense. Matchless Wonder said angrily, the people can leave, but all the resources are still with In Chi. The players need equipment, items, and scrolls that are suitable for them. We have always believed in the rationality of the players. Therefore, we will only attract the players with good quality products at a low price. We won't rely on relationships. It seems like In Chi's rich resources are the source of your confidence, right? Shi Xiaotian asked. I can say without exaggeration that In Chi's resources are the most abundant and comprehensive among all the studios in the game. We can satisfy the needs of the players at all stages and classes. Matchless Wonder said. I wonder if I have the honor to take a look around? After an hour and a half, Shi Xiaotian finally got to the point. She said this in such a reasonable situation, and no one could tell that she had any ulterior motives. However, Matchless Wonder hesitated for a moment, but quickly nodded. Of course, no problem. I'll make the arrangements. 5 Nights didn't question his boss's decision. Moreover, he didn't think there was anything to worry about. Although they could take whatever they wanted from the storage, he believed that his boss wouldn't make the arrangements for no reason. 5 Nights could understand his boss's intentions. In Chi's resources were something to be proud of. Using the fun gaming website's reporters to publicize it would be a great advertisement. None of the gaming studios had ever done something like this through official websites or news reports. Instead, they would gather a bunch of minions to go to forums where players gathered and shout. Compared to this kind of slash-and-burn method, this kind of opportunity saved time and effort and had a greater impact. It could also shatter the rumors about In Chi's demise. Miss Shi, please wait for a moment. I'll get someone to bring a scroll over. We'll teleport there directly, Matchless Wonder said. All right. Shi Xiaotian nodded. This was within their expectations. Teleporting directly into the warehouse would give them the coordinates, and they wouldn't even know which city they were in. Then they would teleport away. It was a foolproof plan. Other than that, Matchless Wonder also informed Eternal that someone was coming to visit the storage, and that a few experts were coming to take a look. Who is it? How many are there? Eternal asked. A reporter from fun gaming website, just one person, Matchless Wonder said. Reporter? Eternal was confused. Yes, he's here for an interview. This matter is really big, and it seems like even the gaming website is going to report about it. We need to be the first to come here, so we have to accept this interview, Matchless Wonder said. But to come to the storage? Eternal didn't say much. To be honest, this wasn't something he should be concerned about. He just listened to his boss and did whatever he said. He didn't ask for the reason, and just carried out the orders. This was the principle of the Eagle Group after they were hired. There's no problem with this person's identity, but who knows if his hands and feet are clean? That's why I asked you to arrange a few brothers to keep an eye on him, but don't go overboard. Don't let anyone see through your intentions, Matchless Wonder ordered. Understood. Eternal nodded. Then, he personally took charge and selected a few brothers. They were all quick-witted people. The scroll will be here soon. Miss Shi, would you like to eat some more? Matchless Wonder arranged everything and returned to the dining table. No need, these haven't been touched. Shi Xiaotian said. The person who delivered the scroll was naturally from the Eagle Group. He had received instructions to deliver the scroll personally, and when he came over, he saw that there were 4 people. It seemed like he wouldn't be able to fly back on the scroll. At this moment, 3 Second Area was also hesitating. He wasn't sure if he had the right to visit the storage. In the end, Matchless Wonder took the scroll and asked Eternal if he had already arranged everything, so he immediately used it. The 2 of them were hesitant about whether they should step forward or not, but Shi Xiaotian and Wei did not hesitate at all and directly entered the teleportation formation. Matchless Wonder clearly didn't think of this detail. The 2 were still hesitating, but the teleportation was already complete. In the end, the 2 were left standing there, looking at each other in dismay. Miss Shi, please take a look. This is our storage. The teleportation happened in an instant. As soon as they arrived at the new location, Matchless Wonder immediately began to introduce them. But I have to make one thing clear. This is only a part of our storage. We don't only have one storage. Matchless Wonder said. Oh, how many storage units like this does Inky have? Shi Xiaotian asked. 20 of them, all about the same size, Matchless Wonder said proudly. That's amazing! Shi Xiaotian exclaimed, while noticing the extra players in the storage. They weren't working in the storage. Instead, they each took a corner, and their gazes would occasionally wander over to her. Shi Xiaotian took note of their positions. She was currently in a 360-degree position, so any movement she made would be seen by them. Miss Shi, please take a look. This is the scroll area. These are the usage scrolls, this is the learning scrolls, and these are the strengthening scrolls, Matchless Wonder introduced. The usage scrolls were single-use scrolls, the learning scrolls were permanent scrolls, and the strengthening scrolls were mostly enchantment scrolls. These scrolls only appeared in the market after the players reached level 40. Regardless of the type, the scrolls in front of her were all piled up like a mountain. Shi Xiaotian took a few steps closer. Eternal and the others were very nervous. Fortunately, Shi Xiaotian stopped when she was about a meter away from the scrolls. She stretched out her head and looked forward, trying to see the labels on the scrolls. Ice Strengthening. Shi Xiaotian read out the name of the scroll. She then looked at the length, width, and height of the scrolls. Matchless Wonder was very pleased by her surprised expression. Ice Strengthening was a passive skill. After learning it, the user's ice-related skills or spells would be greatly improved. Currently, its main customers were ice mages, and it was known as a must-learn skill for ice mages. However, there was no such skill in the skill tree for ice mages. It was a skill that could only be learned through abnormal means. Hence, the price of the scroll was very high, and the demand for it exceeded the price. Many new mages in the game knew that they had to save up from a young age, so that they would have a must-buy skill scroll when they became an ice mage at level 40. Since there were ice strengthening scrolls, there were naturally lightning strengthening scrolls as well. Shi Xiaotian shifted his gaze to the side and saw the lightning strengthening scrolls. The number of lightning-strengthening scrolls piled up was even more exaggerated than the number of ice-strengthening scrolls. Matchless Wonder helplessly explained, "Currently, the number of lightning mages and ice mages in the game is disproportionate, so the price of lightning scrolls is relatively low. These scrolls aren't easy to find in the market," Shi Xiaotian said. Matchless Wonder smiled and didn't answer this question. Shi Xiaotian didn't need to ask to know that this was Ying Qi's marketing tactic. They purposely controlled the number of scrolls in circulation so that the price of the scrolls wouldn't drop. This kind of behavior was probably carried out by all the studios. Although the demand for lightning scrolls was low, Ying Qi was still hoarding them. It was obvious that he had his sights set on the future. Perhaps in the next patch of the game, lightning mages would become gods and lead the way. Lightning enhancement was definitely a necessity. Originally, the number 1 mage in the game, Qianli, was an lightning mage when he was drunk. With such a powerful character, it was enough to cause a trend. But the problem was that Qianli's strength when he was drunk had nothing to do with whether he was an ice or lightning mage. Even if other players were lightning mages, they wouldn't be as strong. This made the studios that were hoarding lightning mages depressed for a while. Even if you're strong, don't be so ridiculously strong. Being too strong would weaken the power of the role model, making people understand that it wasn't a matter of class. After Matchless Wonder introduced the learning scrolls, there was a pile of strengthening scrolls. These scrolls weren't any less valuable than the learning scrolls, but Ying Qi's stock was just as abundant. As Shi Xiaotian walked down, he finally had an idea. He sent a message to Gu Fei and the others, "Get ready." Cries of heaven, "Get ready." Gu Fei hurriedly informed the others. Everyone's spirits were roused, and they stood up one after another. They came to an empty space and divided themselves into 2 groups, 8 on each side. The empty space on their left and right was the preset location for the portal. When Shi Xiaotian used the scroll, the portal would appear from here. Chapter 871. There were many items in Inch's warehouse, so they had to make the most of the space. Shi Xiaotian's teleportation point was where they entered the door, so there was a lot of space. After looking at the scrolls for a while, the space in front of them was used to its fullest. The items were piled up in rows, and there was only a 1-meter wide passage between the 2 rows. Shi Xiaotian continued walking and naturally entered the narrow passage. Matchless Ying no longer had any suspicions towards Shi Xiaotian, but Eternal still continued what he wanted to do. It was impossible to keep an eye on Shi Xiaotian from multiple directions here. Eternal winked and allowed him to follow behind Peerless Genius with the marksman and kite. Matchless Ying continued to accept Shi Xiaotian's praises, while the 2 of them kept a close eye on Shi Xiaotian. As long as her hands didn't come into contact with the items on either side, it would be fine. There was also a pile of items at the end of the 1-meter passageway. It was right in front of Shi Xiaotian, so if she placed her hands in front of her, the person behind her would never be able to see what her hands were doing. Eternal stared at the end of the passage. His thoughts were, if Shi Xiaotian wanted to move the items, she wouldn't be able to move them from the top. If she moved them from the bottom, they would definitely shake, so he had to stop her. But on second thought, she had already gotten the items, so she might not be able to snatch them back. After some thought, Eternal decided that at this position, as long as Shi Xiaotian's hands were out of his sight, he would immediately rush forward. In the end, Shi Xiaotian didn't give Eternal this difficult problem. She stopped about a meter away from the end of the passage, and her hands were hanging by her sides. She smiled and turned around, saying to Matchless Ying, "I roughly estimated the number of scrolls you have, and it's really shocking." "This is only 1/20th of our inventory," Matchless Ying said. "Are the other warehouses also filled with scrolls like this? Why don't we just store all the scrolls in one warehouse?" Shi Xiaotian asked. "Due to the recent changes in our personnel, we have to reorganize the inventory of the warehouse. We are only halfway through the process. Once the inventory is complete, we will divide the warehouse accordingly," Matchless Wonder explained as he turned around and was about to leave the hallway. Since it was only 1 meter wide, the 2 of them couldn't walk side by side. Matchless Hero turned his back to Shi Xiaotian and stopped talking. Forever had to turn around if he was talking to a kite normally, but since he had to keep an eye on Shi Tian, he could only pretend that he was talking to Peerless Genius and walk backwards. However, even though he was talking to Matchless Hero, his gaze was still on Shi Tian. Moreover, it was a little awkward to be spying on him like this, and Eternal was in a difficult position. Fortunately, one kite was a good friend and joined in the discussion. The two of them took turns to keep an eye on Shi Tian as they walked backwards. They wanted to leave the passage as soon as possible. At that moment, Eternal suddenly saw the scroll on Shi Tian's right side tilt. In the next second, Eternal confirmed that it wasn't an illusion. It was real. His gaze was mainly on Shi Tian's hands. He was sure that Shi Tian hadn't touched the scroll. "Be careful!" After confirming that it was an accident, Eternal yelled, giving Matchless Hero a fright. Matchless Hero followed Eternal's gaze and saw that the scroll beside Shi Tian was on the verge of collapsing. Shi Tian raised his head when he heard the voice, and he was also given a huge fright. At this moment, Yong had already rushed forward and pulled Shi Tian over. Although he was sure that it wasn't Shi Tian's doing, he was worried that Shi Tian would grab a few scrolls in the chaos. He was even more afraid that if Shi Tian dodged, the scroll would split them in two. If that happened, Shi Tian wouldn't be able to stop him. As soon as he pulled Shi Tian over, the scroll fell to the ground, and in the blink of an eye, a scroll appeared in Shi Tian's hand, causing his heart to skip a beat. However, before he could come to a conclusion, he saw the scroll fly out. Eternity came to a realization. He thought that the scroll had accidentally hit Shi Tian's hand when it collapsed. The collapsed scrolls smashed onto the other side, causing the left and right sides to sway. This caused a chain reaction, and the 1-meter-wide passage was instantly blocked by a mountain of scrolls. The four of them looked at each other. "Miss Shi, you're in shock." Matchless Genius was the first to respond. "I'm fine, thank you." Shi Tian thanked Eternal. Eternal nodded and turned to his two brothers. "Clean it up, make sure it's secure." The two players from the Eagle group nodded. One of them went to the next passage, while the other waited for the four of them to leave. Just as he was about to enter this passage, he heard the player who entered first shout, "Who are you?" Then, there was no reply. Eternal quickly turned to look at the passage, but he could no longer see the player. The player had already sent a message in the mercenary channel, "Qianli is drunk. Someone's in." Eternal didn't analyze what had happened, and instead shouted the situation to Matchless Genius. In a player's private residence, removing the permissions of others was the most effective method. The owner of the warehouse was the boss, Matchless Genius, and he was the only one who had this level of authority. Matchless Genius quickly entered the list of permissions to remove, and he was instantly dumbfounded. "So many? What's going on? Hurry up and kick him." Eternal yelled at the boss as he rushed into the passage. Before he could even get close to the gap, a new gap appeared in the pile of scrolls. A warrior charged out of the pile of scrolls and slammed into Eternal. Forever was also an expert. He dodged the attack, but he saw a black shadow in front of him, and a sword light surrounded by flames was already slashing toward him. Eternal knew that it was Qianli's drunk. He had fought against Gu Fei before, and knew that the intelligence curse, which was supposed to limit the damage of a mage, had little effect on Qianli's drunk. Eternal could only cast an agility curse, and he couldn't dodge it in time. However, with his luxurious equipment, he was able to withstand the attack. He glanced at the gap and almost collapsed. It was a sea of people. "Kick that woman out." Eternal yelled at Matchless Genius. Eternal cursed himself for being an idiot when he thought of this. It was impossible to enter a player's private residence without permission, and the permission that Matchless Genius had given was only to that reporter. There was definitely something wrong with that reporter. She was the team leader, and the instant that Matchless Genius gave her permission, he also gave the entire team permission. This was a conspiracy from start to finish, and it was a very heaven-defying conspiracy. Even though he had no idea how it was done, there was no point in dwelling on it. They had already suffered heavy losses this time, and it was more important to get rid of these people as soon as possible to reduce their losses. However, Since the notification had already been given, there was no way that Shi Xiaotian would stay with the team. She smiled and pulled out a bunch of scrolls. Matchless Genius angrily removed her permission, but this could not solve the root of the problem for a team that had already been disbanded. Shi Xiaotian's mission had been accomplished beautifully. She had bought a full 10 seconds of time. The number of people who had come in wasn't 8, or 16, or even 24. There were 32 of them. This was far beyond their own expectations. 16 people was already their most optimistic estimate, but now, it was a full double. Matchless Genius removed Shi Xiaotian's permission, but it did not solve the problem at all. Qianli's name was very eye-catching in the long list of names, and Matchless Genius did not hesitate to take action against him. Gu Fei was just about to land a second strike on Eternal when his vision suddenly darkened. When it lit up again, he was already on a street. Shi Xiaoyan was looking at him from the side with a smile. I knew it. Gu Fei was furious. This was the downside of being famous. People were always trying to take advantage of him. The next person to come out was Yun Zhongmu. He also looked helpless. Gu Fei was famous, but Yun Zhongmu's hatred was high. He had once looked down on Matchless Genius and led a group to kill him. Matchless Genius did not hesitate to take action against Qianli after he got drunk. After that, poor Matchless Genius came out on his own. Hidden behind the collapsed pile of scrolls were 30 extremely heaven-defying elites. They quickly rushed out of this obstruction. No matter how good Matchless Genius's equipment was, he was instantly killed by this group of tigers and wolves. What made his heart bleed even more was that the scrolls did not seem to have been pushed away by them. Instead, they had been pocketed. Just like that, they had taken an exit. How big of a loss was that? Matchless Genius, who had revived at the revival point, continued to kick people with all his might. His hands were shaking uncontrollably, and he was extremely angry. The veins on his face were about to burst. He received a system alert. Your heart is beating. Fuck. Matchless Genius cursed without a care for his image. He was forced to go offline by the system. Fuck. The members of the Eagle Party, who were still struggling in the warehouse, cursed without a care for their image. There were only 5 of them, and their opponents included the 10 guild alliances Madman and Drifting. They were no match for them. They could only try to stall for time so that their opponents would not be so focused on looting. Then, Matchless Genius would clear them out as soon as possible. Who would have thought that Matchless Genius would choose to go offline? What was he trying to do? After forever escaped from Gu Fei's sword, he continued to harass the enemy like a guerrilla. Under his command, the other 4 brothers were still alive. However, he soon realized that they were still alive because their opponents did not pay much attention to them. They were focused on looting and did not care about their attacks. This was because they had a godlike priest among them. If you want to die, you'll have the chance. But right now, we don't have time to play with you. We're all busy. Han Family Young Master smiled and looked at Everlasting in disdain. Everlasting was furious, and he wanted to cast all his curses on Han Family Young Master. He felt so powerless. It was too late to mobilize his men, and he could not beat his opponents. He could not even bother to harass them. The most effective method was that the caster was not around. Focus fire on killing them. Everlasting yelled. Focus fire on healing them. Han Family Young Master was not in a hurry. Their opponents were all elites. If they focused fire, they might be able to kill one of them. However, he was not the only priest on their side. Although there was a chance that they would disappear before they could heal, that was only true for normal clerics. Mr. Han was an expert in controlling the rhythm and making use of the time difference. No matter how well they coordinated with each other, it was impossible for their attacks to land on the same person at the same time. As long as they could take advantage of this gap, their recovery would come into play. Han Family Young Master was one of those who could do this. However, Everlasting found out that their attacks could not even kill a single thief. Then, a thief charged out from the enemy's formation like a gust of wind, wielding 2 blades in his hands. Currently, there were no assassins who wielded dual blades. Only berserkers were proficient in dual wielding. As for this dual-blade assassin, Eternal had already heard of him. This was another old friend of his, Sword Spectre. Misty Ambush. Sword Demon was the only one who had such a powerful skill. Even if Gu Fei was arrogant, he only had equipment that surpassed his level. His attack skills were all very simple and common skills. Although most mages wouldn't have skills like Thunder Palm and Wall of Electricity, the system naturally wouldn't give out skills that surpassed their level. Another reason why it was so rare was that there were very few lightning mages. When Misty Ambush was used, even the elite members of the Eagle Party were caught off guard. 2 of them were hit by Sword Demon, but due to their magnificent equipment, they did not die instantly. Of course, the reason why Sword Demon had just been demoted by 2 levels was also because of this. However, with Sword Demon's serious attitude, even if he knew the power of Misty Ambush, he would not put all his hopes on this skill. His follow-up attacks came one after another. Everlasting did not have a priest with him this time. The 2 who were heavily injured by Misty Ambush did not have time to heal and were instantly killed by Sword Demon. Everlasting did not have time to catch up and quickly cast a curse of agility on Sword Demon. Sword Demon did not dodge and continued to walk towards the remaining 3. Everlasting was startled. He had once called Sword Demon brother and knew him quite well. He looked at him and said, "As expected, you still can't accept doing that." Of course, forever referred to looting. Under the cover of the Han family's young master's powerful recovery, no one came to fight. Instead, they crazily looted Ing Chi's inventory. Only the Sword Ghost jumped out to fight without any provocation. Sword Demon did not reply. He only maintained his battle state. He did not seem to have any intention of catching up with Everlasting. At this moment, the boss Matchless Hero calmly re-entered the game after taking a little sedative. However, when he saw the list of 30 people, he still felt a little depressed. But without saying a word, he had already started cleaning up. Han family young master had long noticed that Matchless Hero paused for a moment after he was killed. He did not have Matchless Hero as a friend, so he did not know that this guy was being forced. He only thought that this guy was an idiot. Now that someone was being forced out, he was the first to notice it. He could not care less about Everlasting and whatnot, and urged the others to hurry up. When they first came in, they were surrounded by scrolls. They casually took a few and put them into their pockets. At this time, they had already moved to the equipment area. With a glance, they picked up the good equipment that they were familiar with, and picked up the shiny equipment that they were unfamiliar with. Anyway, there was no way there would be any white or blue equipment here. A bunch of people were busy, but Sword Demon was fighting 1 against 3. However, with the help of a priest like Han family young master, there was not much pressure. Although Sword Demon was 2 levels lower, his equipment was not inferior at all. His attack power was also frighteningly strong. The 3 of them were being held back by him alone. Everlasting felt that their existence was meaningless. Matchless Hero's removal of authority was the only way to solve this. Retreat. In this situation, Everlasting did not want to die for nothing. He gave his 2 brothers a look. On the other side, Fifth Knight, the useless trash with no combat power, was staring blankly with a pale face. At this moment, he only had one thought in his mind: is Ing Chi really finished? Everlasting could not be bothered with this trash. For this kind of guy, it did not matter even if he dropped 10 levels, so Everlasting did not care about him. He brought his 2 brothers and rushed out of the warehouse while enduring the damage from Sword Demon. However, Sword Demon did not give up and insisted on following them out. Han family young master could only shake his head when he saw this. Sword Demon still could not reach out to snatch the goods. He understood. What he did not understand was, why did Everlasting and the others think of rushing out of the warehouse? Was this not courting death? Everlasting only reacted the moment he rushed out of the warehouse. At the critical moment, he suffered a huge defeat. He was extremely depressed and did not think carefully. The moment he walked out, he saw a surprised face covered by the light of the fire and sword. Everlasting fell down. Before he fell, he heard that person exclaim in surprise, "Why did you come out?" "Fuck your mother." Everlasting cursed in his heart. He actually forgot that after removing the authority, people were automatically sent out of the room. Qianli was drunk, so of course he would be outside. Coming out of the warehouse by himself was just like stepping from the 17th level of hell to the 18th level. The other two brothers, under the pincer attack of Gu Fei and Sword Demon, where could they escape to? Before he fell down, he heard Yun Zhongmu rush up and say regretfully, "3, why didn't you leave one for me?" "Sorry, this is a bit difficult for me." Qianli's drunken reply made them unable to die in peace. People started to be teleported out one after another. Matchless Hero's technique was considered fast. However, the 10 seconds that Shi Xiaotian cheated and Matchless Hero forced him to go offline. This operation was a complete victory. Everyone who was teleported out had a look of satisfaction on their faces. Chapter 872. Old Yun. The players from the 10 Guilds Alliance were the most excited. As soon as they came out, they excitedly went to find their big brother, Yun Zhongmu. Yun Zhongmu was kicked out very early. He only had time to grab a few scrolls and put them in his pocket. He greeted his brothers and asked, "How was it?" Everyone patted the pockets on their waists and grinned from ear to ear. "Awesome! That was awesome!" Zhu Xian, one of Yun Zhongmu's brothers, expressed his thoughts on behalf of everyone else. Do a head count. Han Family Young Master was also sent out at this time. He continued to maintain his abnormal calm, which was a stark contrast to Yun Zhongmu's group. Isn't this him? Unscathed in battle was holding a weapon in his hand to show to everyone. The person who recognized him was the only remaining director of Wonder Workshop, 5 Knights. Unparalleled Wonder only cared about speed when he kicked people. He didn't even care about the name of the player. 5 Knights had also been kicked by him in the middle of the fight. Now that he was in the hands of these jackals, he was as weak as a little chick. "You guys are too much." 5 Knights was finally able to speak. Han Family Young Master laughed. "Can you guess why we were so much?" Han Family Young Master didn't deny their actions. He only hoped that his opponents would understand that their actions weren't without a reason. This was revenge. Only then would it be satisfying. 5 Knights was in pain. He suddenly felt like he had no place to hide. He was the initiator of this battle with very defying the heavens. Although what he had done was for the development of the studio, the problem was that his plan had failed. It had been seen through and had been forcefully counterattacked. Those workshops that fought and killed didn't take it seriously. They thought that Unparalleled Wonder didn't have the ability to do so. However, this time, they had lost a large amount of resources. This was a real loss. If they took stock of the losses, they would be able to see the numbers on the books. It was impossible for the resources that the workshop had hoarded to be obtained by their own in-game workers. Most of them had been bought from players over a long period of time. When divided evenly, every item had a real cost. It wasn't like ordinary players, who only spent time and energy on equipment. Such a loss could be traced back to 5 Knights' misjudgment. He had offended someone he shouldn't have. Would the boss give him another chance? He did not care about 5 Knights of life and death in the game at all. What he cared about was his own future. In the storm of poaching people, he couldn't even be compared to the person in charge of a second-tier main city. He was the only person in charge of Ying Qi who had been forgotten. He had already placed all his hopes on Ying Qi, but now, with the current situation, would Ying Qi still be willing to carry him? "Why are you wasting words with him? Just kill him," Cloud Midnight said. "For a character like him, it doesn't matter if we kill him or not. Just let him reflect on his mistakes here." The Han Family Young Master's tone was too gentle, so gentle that it made we even more irritated. "Look, this is from your Ying Qi workshop." Immediately, someone took out a piece of equipment from his pocket and showed it off in front of 5 Knights, purposely trying to piss him off. "I have it too, I have it too." There were many imitators, and everyone was fighting to show off. "Scram. All of you scram." 5 Knights completely broke down. He lost control of his emotions and waved his fists randomly, trying to drive away these guys who were showing off around him. However, his chicken punching skills were not enough in front of these people. A tall and mighty warrior waved his hand and sent him flying to the corner of the wall. "You're looking to die." Everyone cursed and prepared to trample on him. However, Gu Fei couldn't take it anymore. "Forget it, let's just leave it like this. Since everyone's out, let's go." Brother Yu had been counting the number of people. At this time, everyone had already been cleared out. Including Shi Tian, there were a total of 33 people. He nodded and said, "Everyone's out. Let's go." Sword Demon spoke. His expression was completely different, as if he wasn't too enthusiastic about the matter in front of him. He was very much like a passerby. "Which main city is this?" Han family young master looked up at the street. From the coordinates, it should be the main city of Madari in the northeast region. Brother Yu had already checked his intelligence book. Their boss said that they have 20 warehouses like this. "I don't know if it's true or not," Shi Tian suddenly said. Everyone was slightly startled. Even with this warehouse, they weren't able to take away all the goods. If there were 20 warehouses like this, then the goods they took away wouldn't even be 1/20th of Ing Chi's total storage. It might not even be 1/40th. This made them feel that the fruits of victory were too small. Their previous excitement was slightly diluted by this news. "Everyone, you don't have to guess. As for the exact number, I can find someone to determine it." Han family young master said. "How?" Everyone was at a loss. The 18 former directors of Ing Chi's studio. Han family young master said. It was obvious that he was going to use his connections with Yun Ting again. Although the 18 directors who went to Yun Ting couldn't take away the goods, they used to be in charge of the warehouses. They also had to do an inventory check with 5 knights. They were very clear on how many goods were in each warehouse. From this, the total amount of goods in Ing Chi's storage was basically known. It was obvious how much of their goods were. "Why are you still thinking so much? Anyways, there's nothing bad in our hands. No matter how little it is, it's still meat. Ing Chi's fellows will feel heartache. Be more spirited." Yun Zhongmu roared at his brothers. These fellows were really too greedy. Once they saw that they didn't take enough, they became unhappy. "Alright, let's go back to Cloud City." Han family young master gave out the teleportation scrolls. Some fellows were still reluctant to leave. They kept looking at the end of the street and mumbled, "Why isn't Ing Chi's boss back yet? I really want to see him again. And that forever." Haha. Amidst the high-spirited laughter, the teleportation circle activated. The 33 of them directly flew back to Cloud City. Very Overpowered's headquarters. "Take out all the goods and check them." After arriving, Han family young master said. "Hurry up," Yun Zhongmu added. Of course, it was only directed at his brothers. He knew that although his brothers had joined Very Overpowered, they might not necessarily follow the orders of Very Overpowered's people. Thus, he often followed orders and added reminders to avoid awkward situations. Yun Zhongmu's brothers were all straightforward people. None of them coveted the equipment that they had taken. Their original goal was to make Ing Chi's people suffer. For example, 5 knights screaming and screaming after breaking down was actually the most satisfying thing for them. What they wanted and pursued was very clear. The other things were naturally worthless to them. They weren't greedy at all. They all emptied their pockets onto the ground. Of course, there were still some good-for-nothings. For example, Zhu Xian's gaze was currently very erratic, but he was clearly one of Yun Zhongmu's priority targets. He came over and gave him a slap on the head. "You bastard, what are you up to? Hurry up. Damn you." Zhu Xian cursed as he emptied his pockets. Yun Zhongmu's people were the main force of this operation. They made up more than half of the 32 people. Next were the elite group and Drifting and his 2 brothers. Yutian Shinming and Enscathed in Battle were shamelessly dawdling. It was obvious that they were also planning something. However, when they saw Gu Fei standing behind Brother Yu with a serious expression, the 2 of them dawdled and finally came up to hand over the items. Their wretched expressions made everyone laugh. Finally, it was Drifting and his 2 brothers' turn. They didn't say anything and emptied their pockets without hesitation. Although Gu Fei was very suspicious that this shady guy would have some tricks up his sleeves, he really couldn't bring out any evidence. He told the Han family young master about this situation. In the end, the Han family young master's answer was, I agree with hiding something. I hope that everyone will hide something. Then, we'll pretend that we don't know anything. Gu Fei really wanted to chop him to death. This base camp was a completely empty room that had been specially prepared for this time of the year. At first, everyone wanted to pour the contents onto the ground after rummaging through their pockets, but Brother Yu quickly stopped them. In the end, they did it one by one. They counted the items as they poured. When Drifting and his two brothers finished, 2 hours had passed. The items were also neatly piled up, but the room was still half full. It was really a lot. Since they had handed over the items, Yutian Shenming and Enscathed in Battle could only hold the list of items that Brother Yu had compiled and cry with heartache. Electric Strengthening. Qianli, I remember that you don't have this, right? Yutian Shenming pointed at the Electric Strengthening scroll on the list and said to Gu Fei, I don't have it. What's it for? Gu Fei said, You can tell just by looking at the words, it's to make your lightning magic even stronger. Imperial Sky God Ming said, Really? Not bad. Gu Fei nodded. Yutian Shenming looked at Gu Fei eagerly, but Gu Fei had already turned around and left. He didn't say anything else, so the temptation failed. At this time, there was a knock on the door. A player by the door opened the door and looked outside. It was 2 reporters, Duo Mudwa. You're here. This time, it was the Han family young master who took the initiative to greet them. Ah, we heard that there was exclusive news, so we immediately rushed over. Duo Mudwa's face was full of anticipation. We won't let you down. The Han family young master let the 2 in and pointed at the half wall of resources in the room. This is... Duo Mudwa didn't understand. This was just snatched from Ing Chi's warehouse. The Han family young master didn't hesitate and directly revealed the truth. Ah! Duo Mudwa was really shocked. Everyone also liked their shocked expressions at this time. Duo Mudwa's arrival was, of course, part of the plan that the Han family young master had made in advance. They weren't afraid of their actions being exposed. They hoped that the whole incident, from the cause to the end, could be completely restored in front of the players. This wasn't for the players to comment on right or wrong, but to use Duo Mudwa to publicize the way to deal with the looted resources. Throw them away? This was the idea that the Han family young master had casually suggested at the beginning, but everyone felt that it was a bit too wasteful. Moreover, the game company easily took back the equipment, which was also a very unpleasant matter. So in the end, everyone decided that they would throw them away, but not in vain. They didn't care who wanted to pick up the things, but they had to at least say it so that someone would know and come pick them up. Of course, it wasn't to this extent when Duo Mudwa first came up. The whole incident was caused by the guilds in Cloud City plotting behind the scenes. They wanted to destroy against the heavens. Then, they fought all the way until today's revenge operation was carried out. The people who participated in the process all came forward to speak for themselves. Duo Mudwa finally got a very comprehensive version of the incident. You guys are pretending to be our fun reporters? When he heard about the final part of the revenge operation, Duo Mudwa had some reaction. That's not the point, brother. Han family young master patted Duo Mudwa's shoulder and said, Actually, we're just pretending to be reporters. It doesn't matter if it's fun to pretend to be you guys, or if it's just a game. Duo Mudwa looked at the organized information and was silent for a long time. In the end, he said, I think we still need to interview the people from Ing Chi Studio. Maybe they can add some details that you guys don't know. That's your freedom. Han family young master smiled. Unless Ing Chi could sway Duo Mudwa's will, it was absolutely impossible for him to guide the public opinion in this matter. For example, when 5 Knights started to cause mischief, there were a lot of witnesses. It was impossible for Ing Chi to control all of them. Moreover, because of this incident, all of them were covered in dirt and dirt. They hated Ing Chi to the core. Also, how are you guys going to deal with this batch of things? Duo Mudwa asked. Han family young master smiled. Throw it away. Throw it away. Duo Mudwa's surprised expression made everyone satisfied again. Everyone suddenly realized that sometimes, A different way of doing things could make people feel more satisfied. For example, throwing away so many good things. How shocking was that? It was much more satisfying than keeping everything in one's pocket. If they kept everything themselves, that would be too vulgar. There wouldn't be any sense of surprise at all. But Duo Mudwa clearly didn't understand. We just want to teach Chi a lesson. As long as they suffer losses, our goal will be achieved. We don't care about using such methods to obtain these things. Han Family Young Master said. Wow, that sounds really nice. The channel was filled with discussion. Do you guys think he's hiding anything in his pocket? With his nature, he definitely has something, right? That's for sure. Definitely. Wow, Duo Mudwa seems to believe it. It can't be these two idiots. They believe it, they really believe it. There are actually people in this world who believe this guy's pretty words. Sigh, young people really don't know how sinister people can be. I have a share in the channel. Han Family Young Master suddenly interrupted. The channel was silent. All right then, we'll take our leave first. We'll sort out the manuscripts as soon as possible. Do you guys need a final confirmation? Duo Mudwa said. Han Family Young Master said. Goodbye. Duo Mudwa and Han Family Young Master left. Everyone's excitement had pretty much passed by now. Each and every one of them regained their calmness and quietly looked at their spoils of war, waiting for someone to speak and give instructions for the next step. All right, in order to prevent any accidents, temporarily remove everyone's authority in this room. Han Family Young Master said. Everyone nodded. By removing everyone's authority, the only person left with authority would be the Sword Ghost. No one would suspect the Sword Ghost, and by doing this, they would be able to dispel all doubts. Sword Demon laughed bitterly. He was the one who was the least enthusiastic about this operation. He didn't even make a move to take anything. But in the end, the one watching over everything had to be him. This was really helpless. After removing everyone's authority, everyone was automatically sent out of the room. Sword Demon then left. There's nothing else for now. Everyone has worked hard. Go rest. Han Family Young Master waved his hand. Yun Zhongmu's brothers immediately went to get drunk. Yutian Shenming and Unscathed in Battle were still reluctant to part with the things in the room. But if they wanted to open a channel with Sword Demon, it was clearly impossible. Give me a copy of the list. I'll go find Yun Teng's people to take a look. Han Family Young Master said to Brother Yu. I only have one copy. Wait for me to make another copy. Tavern, let's go. Han Family Young Master and Brother Yu left together. Shi Xiaotian, Drifting, Yutian Shenming, everyone left one by one. In the end, only Gu Fei and Sword Demon were left. Sword Demon looked at the door that was piled with half of the materials in the room. He was stunned. It's really boring to compete with the studio. Sword Demon suddenly sighed. It seems like there's no other choice, Gu Fei said. Really? Sword Demon seemed to be asking himself. Then he shook his head. I'll go see Yun Xiang and the others. Yun Xiang was like a heaven-defying internal affairs manager. Gu Fei, Han Family Young Master, and the other elites were all involved in these major operations. The miscellaneous matters in the guild were all taken care of by Yun Xiang. Okay. Gu Fei nodded. What about you? I'm going down first. See you later. The two said their goodbyes and walked to the other side of the street. On the same day, the news had already spread like wildfire in the forum. It came even faster than many other reports. All the posts were in unison, clearly criticizing heaven-defying. Robber, bandit, scum, liar. Such adjectives filled the forum. It was obvious that Ing Chi's counterattack wasn't slow either. They had already sent out their gunners and started attacking heaven-defying's public opinion. In an instant, the players reacted like a tide. Some criticized heaven-defying's group for being violent, some didn't have a good impression of the studio, and some were envious of heaven-defying's ability to take away such a large amount of equipment. But overall, most players were honest, or rather, fake. They didn't approve of heaven-defying's actions. Brother Yu returned to the game and reported the news to everyone. He only got a disdainful smile from Han family young master. Isn't this expected? Mumu Duo's report, can it shut their mouths? Brother Yu asked. Why are you worried about this? Brother Yu, do you think what we did was wrong? Han family young master asked. Chapter 873. Brother Yu was clearly far from young Master Han's carefree attitude. Brother Yu felt a lot of pressure from the players' criticism on the forum, as well as the criticism directed at famous experts like him. However, when he returned to the game to look for the Han family young master, he didn't get any sympathy. He just did what he was supposed to do and didn't care about the comments on the forums. If the guild's reputation is ruined, won't it be hard for us to develop in the future? Brother Yu glanced at the sword demon as he said this. We'll have to wait and see. The Han family young master still didn't seem to care. Brother Yu looked at him, then at the sword demon, then at the others. It seemed like no one wanted to express their opinions, so he could only continue to be depressed. The boss of Age Group, Unparalleled Wonder, was extremely busy. After gathering a group of gunmen to create a storm on the forums, he also wanted to make some noise through the gaming website. However, Unparalleled Wonder rejected Fun Gaming Website's request for an interview. He already knew that Shi Xiaotian was a fake, but he had seen the ID with his own eyes. There was no mistake. This made him feel at ease. More importantly, if Unparalleled Wonder really wanted to dig out the truth of the matter, he wouldn't be willing to do so. If he traced back to the source, it was his studio that was behind all this. Thinking of this, Guy Shuring couldn't help but glare fiercely at Five Nights. Guy Shuring didn't expect that the director's failed operation would lead to such a huge consequence. At this time, Unparalleled Chi-Ing was using his connections and looking for friends. He wanted to find a reliable media company to be his mouthpiece and speak for him. Even if he had to pay some labor fees, it didn't matter. Other than that, the Eagle Group was once again ready to set off. This time, their destination was Cloud City. However, from the leader to the members, their expressions were no longer as relaxed as when they were carrying out a mission. They knew that their opponent wasn't any weaker than them in a direct confrontation. How long would this entanglement last? No one was confident. Fortunately, Matchless Wonder did not place all his hopes on the Eagle Party. He seemed to have realized that their opponent this time would be more difficult to deal with than the 10 Guilds Alliance. Therefore, he invested a sum of money and handed it over to Forever to gather a group of fighters in the game. It doesn't have to be a professional player or a mercenary group. It's best if it's an expert with reputation and background. Find as many people as you can, Matchless Wonder instructed as he handed the money to Eternal. Yong Yong nodded silently. He couldn't help but sigh at how vicious his boss was. He wanted to spend money to drag people into this mess. Experts with prestige and background were involved in this whirlpool. If they suffered heavy losses, they might not even need Ying Qi's request to take revenge. At this time, their reputation, their background, became free weapons for Ying Qi, and in the blink of an eye, Ying Qi could extricate himself from the matter and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. I think you know what to do, don't you? Matchless Hero emphasized again, as if afraid that he would never understand. Understood. Forever nodded. His boss words made his train of thought even clearer. These people weren't even there to win. They were there to make them lose. They were there to send them to die at the hands of 1,000 Miles Drunk, to die at the hands of the Sword Ghost, to die at the hands of Yun Zhongmu, and then wait for them to take revenge. As for the Eagle Party, their main mission was to direct this show from behind the scenes. Eternity sighed and followed Matchless Hero's orders. Even though it was vicious, Eternal had to admit that this plan was very likely to work. Forever was a veteran of the game. He was familiar with all kinds of players and knew that this type of person would be easy to find. Forever temporarily left the game and posted a hero recruitment post on the forums. The gist of it was that Ying Qi's studio had been robbed by other players and didn't have the strength to deal with them. They were asking for help from all the experts on the server, hoping that someone would come out and uphold justice. The opening was all pretty words, pretending to be pitiful and pitiful. The real killer move was at the end, Matchless Wonder's offer. Matchless Heroes' offer wasn't just money, but equipment and scrolls as well. Forever listed all of these extremely tempting items in big, bold letters. He believed that when he logged into the game again, his mailbox would definitely be flooded with messages. Forever also added a request. He wanted the players to submit their name, level, equipment, and skill proficiency to prove their strength. In reality, however, Forever didn't care about their strength. When he saw an outstanding applicant, he would immediately investigate their background. This was the main point of their recruitment. For Ing-Chi, who had employees all over the world, this wasn't difficult. It was just that most of the main cities didn't have someone in charge, so he often had to personally run errands. Matchless Wonder listened to Forever's report and was quite satisfied with his arrangements. At this time, he had finally found a gaming website that was willing to pay him. After preparing a red packet, Matchless Wonder was already prepared to accept an interview. At this time, the Fun Games website had already posted a draft first, announcing the entire sequence of events to the public. Matchless Wonder actually wanted to understand more details and enrich the material in his hands from different angles. However, after Ing-Chi's studio rejected their interview request, the astute old reporter had already realized that something was wrong. In the game, there was competition between guilds and studios. In their news circle, wasn't there also competition between websites? Ing-Chi rejected their interview request, but looking at their offensive on the forum, they clearly knew how to use public opinion. There was only one possibility. They needed a website that they trusted to report. With such a big piece of news, everyone would obviously rush to publish it first. Therefore, Fun Gaming website didn't care too much about the details. They hurriedly let Matchless Wonder organize and publish the information they had on hand, then make follow-up reports to supplement it. Matchless Wonder had no choice but to do as he was told. This report naturally set off a new wave. The press release was quickly reposted by various major forums. Players could start discussions based on this report. Compared to those messy gunner sock puppets, Matchless Wonder's name had a different weight. The opinions of many players were quickly reversed. Some immediately became very defiant supporters, while others only issued disdainful comments of dog biting dog. This time, Ing-Chi's counterattack was very quick. The gunners heard the news and acted quickly. They played word games and refuted Matchless Wonder's report one by one. Among them, the most powerful was the part about Shi Xiaotian pretending to be a reporter and sneaking into Ing-Chi's studio. What kind of reporter was he pretending to be? A reporter from Fun Gaming website. Now that it was Fun Gaming website that made such a report that leaned towards very defiant, the gunners seized the opportunity to crazily exaggerate this relationship. They wished they could just take a stapler and directly nail very defiant and Fun Gaming website together. Of course, Duo Mudwa wouldn't run over to debate with the players who were reading the post. Very Against the Heavens wouldn't be like Ing-Chi and send out some gunmen. In the end, only Brother Yu put on a sock puppet and tried his best to refute a few words while reading the post. However, the gunman's firepower was powerful, and in an instant, Brother Yu was completely destroyed. He escaped into the game to take refuge. Matchless Wonder's draft has been posted. When the forum was bustling, Brother Yu would always be very busy. He would often go up and down to pass on the news for fun. But what made him unhappy was that every time the gossip on the forum that made his blood boil came in, the listeners around him would always look like they were about to die. This time, Brother Yu felt that it shouldn't be like this. After all, this time was also closely related. This time was indeed different. Compared to the previous times when everyone would just say, "Oh, is that so?" and so on, this time someone finally asked, "And then?" It was very noisy. Ing-Chi's gunners? That's right, they were definitely gunners. They all came over to accuse us, accusing us of colluding with Fun Gaming website. Brother Yu said angrily, "Oh, this isn't completely baseless. We are indeed in cahoots." The Han family's young master said. "But it's definitely not like what they said." Brother Yu said angrily. "Brother Yu, what are you so anxious about? Is there any other news?" Han family young master asked. No, but I see that they are trying very hard to find Shi Xiaotian. I'm thinking, will Shi Xiaotian's identity be dug out? Brother, you said. This Han family young master was startled. He wanted to ask Gu Fei if Shi Xiaotian was a famous swindler. In the end, when he took a look, he saw that Gu Fei was already offline. Let them be, the Han family's young master said. Matchless Wonder hasn't reported that we're going to throw the equipment. Brother, you said. Hee, big news has to come bit by bit. Don't worry, they're professionals with news skills. You're just a gossiper, so don't worry. Just watch the show. Han family young master said. Brother Yu was speechless. At this time, he wasn't in the mood to watch the show. This was a closely related matter, but the public opinion was one-sided. Matchless Wonder's draft had just turned the situation around a bit, but those gunmen came over and killed them. He even got shot quite a few times. He really wanted to chop someone up. Brother Yu looked at his friend list. Gu Fei wasn't online. He was very depressed. He really wanted to follow Gu Fei to do some wanted missions. The forum continued to explode. The gunmen that In Chi brought over could be said to be doing their best, inciting the emotions of the players. In comparison, Against the Heavens side was a bit lacking. There wasn't a single person involved who came out to refute. Other unrelated people, even if they wanted to speak, they couldn't raise their voices. This commotion wasn't a scolding battle at all, because one of the sides had actually never gone on stage. And at this time, another heavy bomb was dropped. The boss of In Chi Studio, the game ID Unparalleled Wonder, personally accepted a joint interview from 52 Gaming Network's Watcher Inada and Geo Gaming Network's Uncle Mu Tong. The two websites had already published the interview draft. Compared to Fun Gaming Network's report, 52 Gaming Network and Geo Gaming Network's report pushed the hatred between Against the Heavens and In Chi Studio a lot further, all the way to the negotiation between Five Nights and Qianli Drunk and the others about the efficient leveling method. In the two websites' descriptions, Five Nights was a sincere businessman. He repeatedly gave in to the harsh conditions proposed by Qianli Drunk and the others. He only wanted to make this cooperation happen. But in the end, because of some unacceptable conditions, the negotiations didn't succeed. Then, Qianli Drunk revealed his ferocious nature and killed In Chi director Five Nights after the negotiations broke down. As for the Fun Games website, it was reported that Director Five Nights had secretly organized Cloud Cities guilds to destroy an extremely heaven-defying action. However, in this report, there was a different explanation. The kind-hearted Director Five Nights wanted to cooperate with Against the Heavens regarding the city's business, but because of the previous incident where Qianli Drunk killed him, he found some Cloud City players to accompany him. He also wanted to borrow the fame of the large number of players in Cloud City. In the end, Against the Heavens was extremely arrogant. Not only was he unwilling to cooperate, he even caused a calamity in Cloud City. This calamity directly caused the average level of the players in Cloud City to drop by 0.47. Countless people lost their treasured equipment, and the flames of war even spread to Moonlit Night City. At this point, the reporter was moved to broadcast Unparalleled Wonder's regret for the dissolution of the 10 Guild Alliance in Moonlit Night City. He encouraged the players of the 10 Guild Alliance not to give up because of the betrayal of their former leader, Yun Zhongmu. If everyone worked together, they would eventually be able to restore the glory of the 10 Guild Alliance. This time, it was also a report from the official media, and it was from two different media outlets. They were both famous reporters in the online gaming world, and it was two of them. Although they were not as famous as Mudo, with the addition of two, the sense of reality increased. He had already been one-sidedly suppressed, and was even despised on the forum as if he was worse than a pig or a dog. Brother Yu was about to vomit blood when he saw the post. He scolded shameless scum, and reconnected to the game. Once again he was filled with righteous indignation. This time, the reaction was a little bigger. Zhan Wushang and Imperial Sky God Ming finally followed suit and scolded him for being shameless. White can be called black. These two must have been bribed by In Chi. There are so many players involved in this incident, I don't believe they can all be bribed. Brother, you believed in justice. They don't need to be bribed. Han family young master calmly said. What? Brother, you didn't understand. Shepherd Cloud Guild, Black Underworld Alliance. Do you really expect these people, who were tortured by Qian Li and then extorted a huge sum of money, to speak for us? Young Master Han asked. Brother Yu was flabbergasted. Are they going to be shameless too? Everyone is shameless. I don't think so, but those who are interviewed will definitely be shameless. Those who aren't shameless won't have any weight. Han family young master said. What should we do? Brother Yu was a bit panicked. What should we do? Didn't we already agree? Han family young master said. What? Throw the equipment. Han family young master calmly said, I don't think we need to wait for so many reports. Since you like to go to the forums so much, you can go and make a post. How should I write it? Brother Yu said. In-Chi Studios' despicable, obscene, and dirty methods have harmed players. We've looted a bunch of blood and sweat from In-Chi's storage, and now we're giving it back to the players of Cloud and Night City who were harmed by In-Chi's despicable, obscene, and dirty methods. Everyone come online early tomorrow, we're going to throw out some equipment. Whoever picks it up gets it. Everyone, come and try your luck. Han family's young master said. Is this okay? Brother Yu muttered. That's the main idea. You do as you see fit. Han family young master said. It's decided. Tomorrow? Brother Yu said. Tomorrow then. Han family young master said. Brother Yu went. This time it wasn't an official media, so there weren't many people following up. A simple post, but it became the biggest bomb of the day. Compared to this, what were the messy gossips between the two families worth? It was just something for the board players, and in reality, it had nothing to do with many people. But now, there were real benefits to be gained, so what was the point of gossiping? All of the posts were instantly ignored, and everyone gathered under the post. Some questioned the authenticity of the post, some asked what was in it, some asked about the time and location. Some even said, students at the back, don't reply anymore, it's too late. Their intentions didn't need to be explained. No matter what, this post definitely wouldn't go down. The posts related to this post even flooded the entire forum. Most of the posts were doubting the authenticity of this post. Whether it's true or not, we'll find out tomorrow. A player replied. Which city are you from? Someone asked. Cloud City. Fuck, I'm from Itai City. Damn it, I'm not chatting anymore, I'm going back to the game. That night, it created the highest number of people online in the morning in the parallel world, surpassing the number of online players during the City War event. The game officials were embarrassed. It turned out that it was so easy to create a game online record. The game officials had been following up on this matter, but how should they judge it? Would the game officials have to deal with it? The debate within the game officials was much more intense than on the forum. There wasn't a fight on the forum, because one side didn't care about the other. Compared to this, don't we have something more important to do? A staff member suddenly said. What is it? If all the players from the parallel world are gathered in one or two main cities, how can the server handle it? Everyone was stunned when they heard this. No one knew better than them that the parallel world was said to be a single server for the entire world, but in reality, it was also operated by multiple servers in parallel. A main city was usually hosted by a single server, and switching to a main city was equivalent to crossing servers. But now, if all the players from the parallel world were to be gathered in one server, it would definitely not be able to handle it. Either the server would crash, or the cards that had disappeared from online games for God knows how many years would reappear. Think about it. If the players from other cities want to have the coordinates of these two cities, they have to at least send the scroll in their hands to their friends to help them make the coordinates, or buy the coordinate scroll from the merchants and studios of Cloud Moon City. So, by locking the mail, it's equivalent to controlling their movements to go to the Cloud and Moonlight cities. That's right. Those who didn't understand immediately understood. That's it. Lock the email immediately and make up a reason. Let's do it now. The boss made the decision immediately. A lot of time had passed from the moment he saw the excitement on the forums to the moment the news broke out. Then he discovered that the players had started moving towards these two cities without logging off. Finally, he gathered his people to discuss a solution. According to the data from the monitoring team, the number of people in Cloud and Moonlit Night cities had begun to increase. Obviously, it was impossible to walk to Cloud Moon City from the main cities that were too far away. The players also knew such a simple logic. So, the players who came from far away thought of the idea of teleportation scrolls. Those who had ready-made scrolls were basically ready to go. Those who didn't had ready-made scrolls were looking for ways to buy them. The most depressed were those who didn't have money. They were asking their friends to raise funds. One scroll could teleport 4 people, so each person had a quarter, which would reduce the burden a lot. No matter what, the peak of players in Cloud Moon City and Moonlight Night cities is unavoidable. I think these two main cities should quickly load the servers to reduce the load. Think Tank suggested. Do you have backup servers? The boss asked. Yes, someone answered. How long do you need? The boss asked. If everything goes well, half an hour. But the connection must be cut in half an hour, the person in charge of this area answered. I think. Another person said, as the number of people increases, the server can't handle it. There will be delays, and the players will also feel it. At this time, we will take the opportunity to cut the connection and announce the real reason. It will be solved in half an hour. The players will definitely understand. The boss nodded. Then how many servers should each city load? How many backup servers? The boss asked. 20, the answer was. Why so few? The boss frowned. This is to deal with temporary problems. I didn't think we would need to deal with this sudden situation. This kind of thing changes quickly, so we intentionally controlled the number from the beginning. This is what you signed, the subordinate reminded. 20 servers is enough. Currently, the number of players in each main city is still a long way from full capacity. If it wasn't for these guys causing trouble all over the world and only 2 or 3 main cities, we wouldn't even need to do this. Just in case, use all 10 servers in each city, the boss said. Understood. Are there any other questions? The boss asked. Regarding this dispute, what position should we take? Someone asked the boss. Continue to provide services. Don't get caught up in it when there is no topic pointing at us. The boss seemed to have thought it through. The Parallel World Game Company was also very efficient. The higher-ups held a meeting while making decisions. When the meeting ended, the work of locking down the mail was completed. The announcement on the official website didn't mention anything about this incident at all. It only said that the data was a bit abnormal and suspected to be a Trojan horse attack. The mail service would be suspended, and the items, letters, and money in the mail would be completely preserved. This announcement didn't attract the attention of the players at first. It wasn't until a large number of players who were dealing with teleportation scrolls went through this part of the transaction that they realized there was nothing in their mailbox. It was just a mail sent by the system. When they went to the official website to take a look, they realized that this announcement was exactly the same as the mail in the game. Everyone was in an uproar. Although the officials didn't make a clear statement, there was no doubt that the sudden detection of the mail malfunction at this time made the players who finally had the conditions to go to Moon and Cloud City furious. In an instant, there was a new target on the forum. The boss even said, "Don't get caught up in it when there is no topic pointing at us." But as soon as the mail was locked, it was immediately attacked. Everyone in the game company didn't expect that the busiest department of the night was the customer service department. The phones were ringing non-stop, emails were received non-stop, and the forum was flooded with complaints. Isn't there a problem with locking the mail? Some people were already feeling guilty. The think tank who came up with this idea was sweating profusely. He had underestimated the awareness of the players. Even if the players didn't think of the purpose of this move, as long as this happened and blocked everyone's path to wealth, no matter what the players' true purpose was, they would still come to trample on you. The customer service manager was glaring at him. It was said that there were already 4 customer service girls who were scolded to tears by the players. Crazy, they're all crazy, someone said in a daze. At this time, the first group of players who were migrating on foot had reached the destination. From the map, it could be seen that Cloud City was closer to the corner than Moonlit City. For people in the world, Moonlit City was the closer choice. In fact, many main cities wanted to go to Cloud City, and Moonlit City would become a transit point. At this time, Moonlit City was a step ahead of Cloud City, and there were even more players who didn't plan to continue. Moonlit city area and outside the city were filled with people. The network lag that had been extinct in online games for many years had finally appeared. Moreover, in the holographic mode, the players had a whole new experience. Every player had mastered teleportation, and the scene in front of them was always reincarnating. The words that they had just said were actually heard again in the next second. Where did the sound come from? No idea. Amidst the panic, the system announcement appeared without delay. The server is overloaded and will stop working soon. Players, please pay attention to the official homepage. 10 seconds later, the Moonlit City players were all cut off from the internet. Everyone rushed to the homepage and saw the announcement that the game company had prepared. This announcement didn't cause too much commotion. The players could understand the real reason. More importantly, the game company promised to solve the problem within half an hour, which made the players feel at ease. Reality proved that the game company in the parallel world was quite honest when it came to operations. The native players of Moonlit City were the most displeased. According to their knowledge, they were a guild from Cloud City, and they were the ones who had caused this to happen. Yet, in the end, Moonlit City had been disconnected. What was going on? The temporary shutdown of the server didn't cause a huge uproar, but the mailbox problem still needed to be solved. The announcement had been out for more than an hour, but there were still players complaining and cursing. 3 girls from the customer service department ran to the washroom in tears. Another announcement: mailbox monitoring is also to be responsible for the players. If the data is damaged, it's the players' interests that are lost. That's why the mailbox is locked. The secretary immediately recorded the boss's instructions. Of course, the boss meant what he said. The official announcement still needed to be polished. Polite words like, "Players, please understand," and "not having a mailbox does not affect the game. Have fun playing," still needed to be said. After this announcement, the players quieted down a little. Many players who had calmed down began to ask how long it would take to solve the problem, hoping for a clear answer. Therefore, the game company replied that because it was an external attack, they couldn't estimate the time and asked everyone to pay attention to the latest announcement. Everything was just like the saying, telling a lie requires countless lies to cover it up. The game company found an excuse to lock the mailbox, and now they had no choice but to continue lying to patch it up. More importantly, with so many players being so aggressive, it seemed like they couldn't keep using this mailbox lock. It was better to find another way. Once again, the higher-ups sat together nervously. Among the players who were denouncing the mailbox incident, there was no lack of forever comrades. He had to rely on the mailbox to contact his subordinates. He was planning to deal with all the mail once it piled up, but he didn't expect to receive a system mail like this when he arrived. He was furious. Then he realized that with the mailbox locked, they couldn't go to Cloud Peak or Moonlit Night City. They didn't have teleportation scrolls with the coordinates of the 2 cities. Although the studio had them, the mail was blocked, so they couldn't send them over. The news that they were going to dump their equipment was also known by now. Matchless Genius was furious. He didn't expect these guys to be so calm. There were so many equipment scrolls, and they weren't tempted at all? Perhaps each of them kept some for themselves, but they were willing to give up most of it. This was undoubtedly a smart move. This move easily shut the mouths of the players. No one cared about who was right and who was wrong in this fight between against Matchless and Matchless. What was worse was that this move couldn't be replicated by Matchless Genius. Although they had more resources on hand, the equipment that Matchless Genius threw away belonged to them, so they were the ones who felt bad. Now that they were throwing it away, would they continue to feel bad? What's more, what was the point of this? Just by throwing it away, they would be able to kill against Matchless Genius? Not only was there no reason for Matchless Genius to throw it away, but it also proved that he was an idiot. Shameless. Too shameless. Matchless Genius clenched his teeth in anger and messaged Forever, "Immediately go to Cloud City. If you see against Matchless Genius, kill him." "I can't go." Forever replied miserably. "Why?" "My mailbox is locked. I can't get a teleportation scroll." Forever replied. But Matchless Genius couldn't even curse anymore. He felt like he was really unlucky. Why did so many things have to happen at the same time? "How's it going with the people I asked you to bring?" Matchless Genius asked. "My mailbox is locked." "Do I have to use my mailbox for this? Can't you change your contact details? Go and leave your ID on the announcement and open your friends list. If that doesn't work, leave your phone number, your QQ, and your email." "Don't you know how to do that?" Matchless Genius roared. In fact, ever since he hired the Eagle Party as his personal guard, he had never spoken so rudely to the players. This time, he was angry, truly angry. Forever was tactful and replied, "I'll get it done," before disappearing. Fuck, why is it like this? Matchless Genius felt like things were going too far from what he had planned. He didn't know if he could turn things around. At this time, Cloud City, with Moonlit City acting as their cover, was very peaceful. Aside from the obvious increase in the number of players in the wilderness on the streets. These players had teleported to Cloud City before their mailboxes were locked. Their numbers weren't enough to cause congestion in Cloud City, but it was obvious that there was an increase in the number of people. This was different from a siege war where players would gather in one place. These players were moving around freely like normal people, making Cloud City look very lively. It was very heaven-defying, and he was quite busy at the moment. Countless players were trying to contact them and find out what was going to happen tomorrow. These players had traveled thousands of miles to come here, and if they returned empty-handed, they would lose face. They had to at least get something. This was especially true for those OP players who felt that they had the upper hand at this moment. However, it was a pity that this operation was extremely heaven-defying. Only the core members of the guild were participating. Apart from them, the rest were Cloud Twilight's subordinates. Although the others knew about this, they weren't much different from other players. They were even thinking of coming out early the next day to pick up the loot. As members of their own guild, they were treated like this. It was hard to bear. However, the guild's internal department had already digested this problem. Yesterday, Sword Ghost had gone to find Yun Xiang and dealt with this problem. Otherwise, the guild members wouldn't have been able to explain the entire plan at all. It was a little sad. After knowing the whole story, the very strong players didn't have any more objections and continued doing what they were doing. However, it was troublesome to have friends come to ask. If they said they didn't know, they wouldn't believe them. In the end, everyone was a bit embarrassed. However, everyone was mentally prepared for this situation. They had a clear conscience. It's a lot livelier. Han Family Young Master stood at the entrance of the tavern, feeling quite depressed. He wasn't afraid of the liveliness. What annoyed him was that there were so many people that the tavern was full. This was already the 7th tavern he went to, and it was still full of people. From this point, Han Family Young Master regretted making this plan. That's good. Moonlit City has already stopped connecting because there are too many people. Brother, you said. It seems like everyone is paying attention to our operation this time. Han Family Young Master said. But the things we have, I'm afraid we can't satisfy so many people, right? Brother, you said. Of course. Compared to so many players, this amount of resources is too small. Han Family Young Master said. How much do we have? Did Yun Ting tell us? About 1/15 of the resources of In Chi Studio. Han Family Young Master said. That's a lot. Brother Yu's eyes widened. At that time, they couldn't even move half of the warehouse. He didn't think that they would have 1/15 of the resources. It seemed like when Unparalleled Wonder was interviewed by Shi Xiaotian, he didn't say much about the resources. Hey, where are you going? After Brother Yu said this, he realized that Han Family Young Master had already disappeared. He turned around and saw that he had left without a word. Seeing everyone's passion, I'm touched. I've decided to go offline and rest. I'll come back early tomorrow to deliver the goods. Han family young master waved his hand without turning back. Is that so? Isn't it because there's no place to drink? Brother, you muttered. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.